It's over, all over, and soon somebody else will make a fuss about you, but how about me? It's over, all over, and soon somebody else will tell his friends about you, but how about me? You'll find somebody new, but what am I to do? I'll still remember you when you have forgotten. And maybe a baby will climb upon your knee and put its arms about you, but how about me?
Did you hear the song?
Yes. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, it's a nice, sweet song, but the words are really treacherous.
No?
So hang on, let me turn the music off. So I'm not distracted by the 1920s vintage original music.
100-year-old music.
You love it?
Isn't that great? A hundred
Yeah,
year old. That like the letter you were reading. I guess it was this morning. 100 years old.
I know.
Just wow.
I'm
Same
I'm
spirit.
always I'm always impressed with the vocabulary from 100 years ago and the grammar.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was different. Yet we understand. We're able to hear and comprehend the things that he was seeing. It's
Right.
really beautiful.
So the song we were just listening to, it said, "It's over, it's over. They'll be talking about you, but not about me." Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So the guy was crying that his girlfriend broke up with him. Right? In the
Oh,
song, right? And that she won't even think of a thought about him. Right? But he'll never forget her, but she'll forget him. Anyway, I remember
some
years
modern
ago.
country music lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. Some 30 years ago, I remember talking to a woman. I don't remember the whole conversation, just one part of it. She said that her ex boyfriend called her up after some amount of time, right? And he said, uh, "Did do you remember me?" And she said, "I remember you," but it didn't go any further than that.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was just a nothing conversation. But now that I look back, I go, man, she was revealing her cold heart
Mm.
because he was looking for love, reaching out to be touched. And she says, "I remember you," but she didn't say fondly.
Fondly.
Yeah,
I'm awfully fond of you. Hmm.
yeah.
What are you drinking?
Um, some kind of juice made from alligators.
Okay. Alligator juice. Okay.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
You ever had alligator juice?
I suppose. I don't know.
Uh, Hey, your best buddy's here.
Oh, who's that? Hey, Sean Eagle.
What's up, Lauren?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I woke up this morning and thought it was Monday and I had to go do some work. And
Yeah.
Debbie says,
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" I need to take care of some stuff. It was Sunday morning. Okay. I'd lost a whole day somehow. Guess that happens when you get old.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Mr. Will Freeman in the chat.
Isn't Will Freeman a delight?
You know, I gotta say, I like him. You know, that people, who was it talking about? But he's not a Christian. He's not saved. He's not this. Yeah, well, this is here to prove something about that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So, when God sat down with the heathen and the sinners and the publicans and the
I
tax
know.
collectors and the whores and the prostitutes and all the filthy people, shame on Jesus.
What was he thinking?
What was he thinking?
Loving on sinners,
man.
being sweet on sinners. What was he thinking?
Yep. He must have got it wrong. He didn't have the right message. I'm joking. What you munching on there, John?
Oh, I just got these little almonds.
Oh, yeah. I've
Every
been
now
eating
and then I have some.
pistachios. My wife
Oh,
bought
yeah.
a bunch of pistachios. I love them.
Yep.
This guy's 5-year-old son, he had a goldfish and it died. So he threw a baby carrot into the fish tank. It
Oh.
looks kind of like a goldfish.
Oh. So
I don't know what the rest of the story was, but
that's the whole story.
that's it,
It
man.
leaves you hanging.
Yeah, it's funny.
What's in the mind of little children? You know, you can be amused by the simplest of things.
So this morning before the show started up, right? We have the pre-show thing, right? So it's not recorded. We're just hanging out, talking about things,
Mm-hmm.
anything that comes to mind. And our old buddy from down the hall shows up, right? The one whose initials you know. Anyway, so we're having a mildly charming conversation, mildly.
Okay.
And then little by little it ramps up.
Yeah.
To where he's starting to get mean as snot, right? So I asked him to read one passage of scripture. That would be 2 Corinthians 5:18-21, which says, God was in Christ conciliating the whole world to himself. And he says something like, you're not the boss of me, Ace. You can't tell me what to do. And I was thinking about that later today. Such an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Paul, I mean, if such an attitude doesn't reflect well on his spiritual being. Now, I know I'm talking to you, Mr. Mystic. And you've got these ideas of what is spiritual and what is not spiritual, right?
To a degree.
Yeah. And I'm not putting down your ideas. I'm just saying I'm reluctant to use the word spiritual these days. I mean, back when I was a full-on mystic, more than you, I was real spiritual, don't you know?
Yeah.
But I'm just reluctant to talk spiritual crap, right?
Yeah.
So now I don't give a crap about anything, right? So I'm
Right.
just a recipient of grace, right? So
Yeah, indeed.
But I was thinking that his attitude of you're not the boss of me, Ace, reflects in a spiritual way.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think we could say, there's something going on here in the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember how, our little old passage that says, God will become all in all?
Mm-hmm.
Well, right before that, it says, all will be subjected to Christ. Subjected. Did you hear that word? Subjected.
Yeah.
You're not the boss of me, Ace. And then Christ will be subjected to God. So not even
Right.
Christ says that to God. You're not the
Right.
boss of me, God.
Right.
And then Paul uses that very same word. Where in Galatians? I can't remember. It says, be subject to one another.
One another. Yes.
So,
Right.
so
In the
if he,
Spirit of Christ.
if the hair on the back of his head gets all tingly, right?
Russell.
And he says, you're not the boss of me. He's not submitting to me. Well,
Yeah.
it's my channel. You want to play
Yeah.
my game? Read this passage. It ain't long.
Yeah.
You're not the boss of me. But I was just thinking that it reflects on a spiritual attitude of I'm not going to submit to you. I'm not going to submit to anybody. I'm my own man. I'm not even going to submit to God. We'll see if God is the true subjector or not. I got my own free will. I can do it
Yeah.
myself.
It's just where he's at. If you can't see it, he can't see it.
Yeah, but I was just thinking that attitude,
Right.
I can say is not a spiritual attitude.
The greatest among you is the servant
Right.
of all.
And
What is
and I
that?
can say as a testimony, my own personal testimony, or my my experience with it all. These guys don't want to submit.
Yeah.
They've got their own ideas and they brag on their free will. And that free will business is not submitting business.
Hmm.
I have a free will and God can't force me to love him. Don't you know? He can't pull the rug out from under my feet. I know what I'm doing.
God will never make anybody do anything they don't want to do. God doesn't always get his way.
That is the craziest thing to say, you know what I mean? God doesn't always get what he wants. What a crazy notion.
Yeah.
Who are you, oh man,
Yeah.
who can advise God?
Yeah, exactly. Besides, there's several places that indicate that nobody really knows God. Nobody understands God. God has hidden these things from stupid man so that we have to trust him. We can't try to figure him out. So I trust in the salvation that began long before I was thought of.
Right
So
on.
we could write a song called "He Will Always Get What He Wants."
He will always get what he wants. He
Yeah.
will always get his way. We're just trudging along through time. God's been there. God's been in my tomorrow.
That's a strange phrase. Say it again.
God has already been in my tomorrow.
Wow.
He's there. I don't have anything to worry about. Preparing a way to walk in.
Yeah, so if this salvation of the Lord started and completed and perfected long before we were born, that you might walk in them, I prepared good works that you might walk in them.
Right.
So Sean is always looking for imagery, right? You say a little metaphor and he imagines it. So how about this? So these good works and this salvation has already been created. And we just happen to walk into it like, oh my God.
Look what I
We
did.
walk into it and it, we're not even know really what's going on. What did you walk into? I bumped into a wall at first. I thought it was a wall, but then it turned out to be salvation. I walked into it.
Or like Paul, yeah, how'd your day go? I got knocked on my ass.
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
bright light and a voice spoke to me. Oh yeah, your day's going good. Okay. Paul, how'd your day go? God's got plans, doesn't he?
Yeah, kind of like asking Mrs. Lincoln, "Hey, how'd your day go? How was that play?"
Did you enjoy the play? Yeah. Oh goodness. If Jesus loses even one, you're right, Will. Either Jesus is a failure or he's the winner. I am firmly persuaded that before creation, God made Christ, and he made us in Christ. He made us all. And we were all born into Adam in the natural world, there already having been in Christ. And at the time of the cross, we were all drawn into Christ, all died with him, all raised with him. There's just this cohesive plan from before creation to the end of creation, to the end of all
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all tied together. I see that. You cannot escape being under the will of God and the plan and purpose of God. You can't get out of it, Monty. You can't. You can't will your way out.
Jesus made it clear, says Monty. Most won't be saved, says Monty. Matthew 7 says Monty. Okay,
Oh,
Monty.
God.
What
Thank
if that's only for this age, Monty, and there's another eon where things will change or things will be different that you haven't heard about yet, Monty? What if there's something more to come? Is it possible God has a master plan and he only let you see a glimpse of it?
No, Monty has pretty good vision. He doesn't even need glasses, you know.
Mm.
He can see 2020. He's even on God's board of counselors, you know, board
Oh,
of advisors. So he
yeah.
advises God, and
Oh, well.
he gets paid a board membership fee, you know.
Yeah. Oh, well. It's all good to me.
Oh yeah, Mac, come in. We're supposed to be talking about gardening, but we can't shut up about this
Yeah.
great God who respects a man's free will.
I can't garden much with the routine we've had. We're still got huge compost piles at both locations, so we add to it all the time. But we're not here long enough to plant any food and you know see it produce.
Hey, I got an idea for you.
What's that?
Plant a bunch of seeds on the compost pile itself.
We've had a bunch of stuff sprout when we don't turn it.
Uh
Within
huh.
like every 4 or 5 days if we forget to
Because that
turn it.
compost pile will capture the rain,
Hmm.
so you don't have to be here to water it.
Yeah, I got news for you. A 2-inch rain in Arizona means the raindrops are 2 inches apart on the sidewalk.
Oh my God, that's funny.
We don't get rain. We're in the desert. So, but we do have the irrigation system that sprinkles it twice a day, and it still dries out, but it still, helps the microbes and whatever continue.
You guys have grapefruit down there, don't you, Lawrence? A lot of
Loads
grapefruit?
of citrus, orange, and tangelos. Have you ever had a tangelo? It's
Yeah,
an
they're
orange.
great.
Oh my gosh, they're so juicy and sweet. And we have grapefruit, and we have dates, and we have all kinds of stuff like that year round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Hey, speaking of Monty and his libertarian views, right?
Hmm.
So, a fellow like Monty, Eric, JG, you know, just the usual crowd, a fellow who believes in some kind of endless hell. Monty brags it's got to be annihilation, and others might say it's eternal torment. But a fellow who brags there's some kind of endless hell, and you know, he's also saying, "I want God to burn my enemies and punish my enemies." I mean, just read between the lines. He's
Yeah.
got no care and concern. So
Yeah.
could we say of that fellow that he has not repented of that wicked attitude? He wants to see people go to hell. He doesn't have a heart for
Yeah.
repentance.
I think if people really genuinely believe that man can make a choice to not wind up in this horrible hell, that he would spend 24 hours a day beating down every door until his whole city is covered, and go to the next city and beat down every door and tell everybody about this awful thing that's coming to their life, if they really cared. But I don't think they even believe it themselves.
Mhm.
It's just one of those mythical Christian things that we all got stuck in. So, Oh, Monty. I've asked Monty this question numerous times. He hasn't answered me. How does Billy Bob, who was born in 1350 BC, believe in Christ? What do they do? What? There's billions. There's been like 100 billion people since Adam on this planet that have come and gone. How do most of them who've never heard about this Jesus believe in Jesus? I'm sure they have an answer, but how did the Aztecs believe, Ace? Those poor Aztecs.
Poor Aztecs.
When they about 800 years ago or something, or
Yeah.
further. Yeah. Yep.
Sean, you ready for some gardening talk? Because you're a gardener, right?
Oh, your mic's off, John.
You're a talker, but nothing comes out.
I was
You
sitting
have
there
a free
saying,
will to talk, but your mic won't let you. So how free is that free will, right?
yeah. No, I was saying they were believitarians, the Mayans and the Incas, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize my mic was off.
They had King James Bibles, didn't they?
Yeah, how did they come to believe? I don't know.
Right. Well, how did anybody? Because
right.
the narrow-mindedness of saying that, well, you've got to believe in Jesus. Well, then you have to have come here after Jesus, and you have to have heard the story, the right story. Goodness. It's just silly of man.
Is this the video, Ace?
It's a video. This is Anne of all trades. She's a gardener, a small-time farmer.
Cool.
And she's pretty good. We've seen one or two of her videos before.
Yeah.
So I'll hit play, and you guys tell me when to pause it when you want to talk. Okay?
Yep.
Hang on a second. It's called The 5 Dumbest Mistakes Gardeners Make Planting Seeds. Make planting seeds. The 5 Dumbest Mistakes Gardeners Make Planting Seeds. Okay. And here's a couple of comments. As a prolific seed killer, I thank you for this advice.
Whoa.
Next comment is, planting seeds is one of the greatest acts of faith. Wow. I have farmed for years, and every year I find myself hoping that they all come up, wondering if they will. Third comment, December, I put down a strip of TP, wet it, sprinkled it with carrot seeds, another strip of TP, spritzed it, and leaves it. Snow keeps it wet, so when warm weather comes, they sprout. Well, and that's something. Okay, so let's hear what Anne of Green Gables, Anne of all trades has to say.
Okay.
Did you know that garden seeds are only supposed to be planted 2 times deeper than the seed is thick?
What?
Planting tiny seeds way too deep is just one of the many mistakes I see young gardeners making. Let's talk about those mistakes and how to avoid them so that you can grow a super successful garden this year. For many of us, the miseducation about how to properly grow plants from seeds started all the way back in preschool. If you can remember that far back, we took a Solo cup and some soil, and we stuck our finger in that soil, and we put a seed way down deep in that soil. And then we covered that up, and we pushed the soil down around the seed. And what I just did is the first big mistake most people make when it comes to planting their seeds. It took me about 5 years of gardening to actually figure out this simple truth about seeds. A seed only wants to be planted 2 times as thick as that seed is. Now with peas, they're bigger seeds, so we have a little bit more grace when it comes to putting them in the right place in the soil.
She said grace.
But lettuce seeds? Man, these things are tiny. Talk about kale seeds, broccoli seeds, carrots, you can barely.
Go ahead.
I noticed every time I watch these shows, there's like these spiritual little metaphors that come out of them. It's really cool. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that is funny.
And remember all those spiritual metaphors in Paint Your Wagon?
Oh, God, please. Ace.
Even see these things. And planting these and getting them to successfully grow can actually be super challenging, especially if we're going the way too deep method, because imagine how much it takes for this tiny little guy to make its way to the surface of the soil. I had kind of a big aha moment when thinking about how to better explain this last year while I was planting my grass seeds in my...
Hey, Mac. Mac the human.
Hey!
I love you.
Aw, I love you too.
Mr. Mac.
Hey,
you're just this side of awesome, man.
Yeah. Honored to be here.
I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, Mac, good to see you, bro.
I love what she was just saying. Those little tiny seeds.
Yeah, they are a pain in the butt to get them. Carrot
are.
seeds and tobacco seeds, man, they're a pain.
They're like dust.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Okay, I'm imagining.
Okay, imagine an acorn and then
Okay.
an oak tree.
Wow. I feel
They're
like
the same
Sean.
thing.
I feel like Sean now.
Whoa.
Okay, imagine an acorn, an oak tree.
It's incredible.
Is that where oak trees come from? Acorns? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Actually, that's where acorns come from. Oak trees.
Oh, okay.
It's true both directions. They come from each other.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Williams made hickory nut milk. That's not something a lot of folks do. That is so good. Black walnut milk is really good too. You got to work for it though.
What do you stomp on them with rubber boots or something?
Some people drive over them with their car.
Really? Oh man.
Black walnuts grow. Have you ever seen them? They grow with like a green fleshy
Yep.
shell around
Uh-huh.
them. They have to rip off. And it's a pain. So worth it though.
Wow. Black walnut milk. You'll never see that in the store.
No. Yeah. Cherokee recipe. Heck. I love it. Yeah, let's keep going.
pasture for my cows. This is grass seed. It's pretty dang tiny. And if you have a lawn, you might have planted grass seed before. How do you actually plant grass seed? You put it in this little churny thing and you walk around your yard and you just spread the seeds out on top of the soil. If you're really into lawn care, you might even rake it in, but you're not out there with a shovel digging holes for each one of those little grass seeds and then burying them deep, 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 deep down. You're sprinkling them on the surface, getting them wet, and hoping for the best. And in a bunch of my garden beds, I do exactly that. I actually will dump a whole bunch of different kinds of little seeds that I want to grow in an area into a plastic bag. I'll mix them all up, and I will what's called broadcast seed them all over the place in the garden bed. Now, these little seeds be little now, but pretty soon they're going to be a lot bigger, so I don't want to overspread seeds. That tiny little lettuce seed is going to become a whole head of lettuce. This spinach seed is going to turn into a clump of spinach. The broccoli is going to turn into a giant broccoli plant. So we do want to be a little bit conservative, but also when we're doing things like broadcast seeding, we also are fully aware that not all of those seeds are going to germinate at the same time, at the same rate. Not all of them are going to be super successful. We might have to come back and thin. We might have to come back and replant, and we're okay with that. However, there are a couple reasons why broadcast seeding isn't the best solution for everyone. For example, if you're really limited on garden space, there are all kinds of garden planning techniques that you can use, like square foot gardening. All of that just involves a little bit more planning and careful execution. We also want to use our judgment. Going back to the peas example that we used at the beginning of this video, peas actually do want to be planted deeper than, say, lettuce seeds because they are bigger seeds. But here's the great thing, especially if you're buying your seeds from the store, they very likely have planting instructions on the back, which can very conveniently help us avoid some of the other seed planting mistakes we're going to talk about as this video progresses. And before we do actually move on to the next gardening mistake, let's just revisit our preschool planting tutorial and undo one other really bad piece of advice. When we stuck our finger into that soil and then put our seed in and then pushed all the soil down around it, that was something we as gardeners don't actually want to do.
So I got a question for you guys.
Yes.
How come she doesn't have 10-inch fingernails?
She's got her hands in the soil.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because seeds
Look at those fingernails. They're not 10 inches long.
need to breathe. Roots of plants need to breathe. When we compact soil down around them, we are making it much harder, not just for them to emerge from the soil, but also for their tiny little fragile roots, especially when they're really, really little, to actually make space and swim through the soil to spread out and get access to the nutrients and the water and the other things that they need to support the plant above the soil. One of the best seed planting tips I've gotten from an old farmer friend of mine is seeds only need to touch their feet to soil to be able to grow. We don't want to crush them or compact them underneath layers and layers of soil and make it harder for their feet to grow wings. We just want to get their feet to touch that soil and move along. Another huge mistake young gardeners make is caring about their plants a little too much and watering them so much that they actually drown. This sponge is a handy example of exactly what we want and don't want from our garden soil where we're planting our seeds. If we can grab a handful of our soil and squeeze it and a whole bunch of water comes out, we are definitely in danger of drowning our plants. Just like us, plants are not very good at breathing underwater. So yes, they do need water to survive, but the consistency of the soil that you're planting your seeds in should be about the same moistness as a moist sponge that doesn't have a whole ton of water stored in it. In places like Tennessee, that's actually super easy to accomplish, especially during the early spring because we get tons of rainfall naturally. So around here, we can...
Okay, you guys want to move to Tennessee?
Do they
Yeah,
have
that's a lot.
bugs?
Wow.
Looks pretty good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, if the shit hits the fan, we'll all meet in Tennessee.
Tennessee. That's
I think
really
Sevy's
easily
there
toss some seeds in the soil.
Say what?
I think Sevy lives there near Knoxville or something.
Oh, that's
yeah?
right. Sebi does, yeah.
Yeah, he can tell us where to go.
And expect the early spring rains to kind of take care of things and keep the soil naturally moist the way we need it to. But come midsummer, when it's 95 to 110 degrees every day and we're not getting rain for weeks at a time, we might have to, at least temporarily, break our never watering our garden, lazy gardening principle just to make sure that our seeds germinate. And that can look like a whole bunch of things, like using soaker hoses or putting out a sprinkler at night on a timer, or just hand watering our beds as they germinate. Because especially if we're dealing with little tiny seeds that are actually planted at the correct depth in our soil, it's going to be really, really hard and also vitally important that we keep that top layer of soil just moist enough to get the seeds to germinate, but not so wet that we actually drown those seeds in the process. But even if we do have to resort to using soaker hoses or sprinklers or at least intermittent watering, we as lazy gardeners have a huge leg up over traditional gardeners.
Oh, did you see that? Look at those fingernails. That is not Anne. Shocking, huh?
shocking.
Shocking.
Where'd Sean go?
Sean.
Sean, where'd you go?
Whenever he gets a phone call, it ditches him.
Oh, gotcha.
Hello, Sean.
Hey, there he is.
Why did you leave us? Why did you leave me, Lucille?
No,
3 hungry children and a crop in
whatever.
the field. Why
Whatever.
did you leave me, Lucille?
Lucille.
Ace.
What?
No, I hit Spotify. I had Spotify in my other window and I accidentally hit it, so it put me in there for a minute.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What
If
were you listening
leave
to?
me now.
Marshall
Take
Tucker
away.
Band.
No kidding.
Marshall Tucker Band all the time. That's all I listen to in the morning when I go out walking.
Are you
Really?
serious?
I almost listen to them repetitiously pretty much every day. Yeah, I fucking love them.
Will Freeman, you
What?
hearing this?
One of the best. That guy is called the Thumb. Toy Caldwell plays that guitar with a thumb, and they were all in the services, and they went to high school together. Then they split up and went into the services, and then when they got out, they got together and created the Toy Factory, and then which later became Marshall Tucker Band, based
That's
on a
amazing.
piano teacher that had locked his key, or the key had like a little tag on it that said Marshall Tucker, and that was his name. So that band was actually named after a blind guy who played and tuned pianos at 90 years old.
Oh wow. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Pretty cool story.
That is so cool.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt the whole show, but
Hey man, there's a Will and Halsey and I have been working on Can't You See? Will singing and
Yeah.
playing guitar, and I put a little harmonica over it. So I've been listening to a lot of Marshall Tucker Band lately. So it's crazy to hear you bring them up.
I listen to him every day, bro, all the
That's
time.
awesome. It
Yeah,
really is a
there's-
great band.
And there are so many metaphors in their music that'll blow your fucking mind too. And I think he kind of predicted his own death. Basically, he died at a young age, but
Hmm.
he. I think it's the one where they took my family away from my Carolina home. Fire on the Mountain, and that there's gold in the hills. There's gold out there in the music industry.
Mm.
It's kind of weird. And at the end of the song, he says, "Now my widow cries from the grave, cries about her man that she couldn't save." And then it talks about the death. It's kind of weird. It's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
haunting, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song's a mind blower. Sorry.
No. That's awesome.
So garden party / Marshall Tucker band party.
Right.
Heck
right,
yeah.
So you see this girl's fingernails right there?
Yes.
Yes,
Sean.
they're gorgeous.
Right. She uses that hand to play the guitar.
She's awesome. She must love music.
She can do some picking.
Oh yeah.
Intermittent watering. We
No.
as lazy gardeners have a huge leg up over traditional gardeners doing things the old-fashioned way in that we never leave our soil uncovered. I mean, look around me. There is no exposed dirt in this garden. At least I hope there's not. And there's very good reason for that. Wood chips actually act very similarly to sponges in that they themselves are comprised of a bunch of tiny little pores and holes, which are really, really good at holding water in the soil. So if we make sure to keep our
Oh, by the way, you guys, 1 pound of wood will hold 6 pounds of water.
Wow.
Dang. That's crazy.
1 pound of wood chips or logs or whatever you got, it can hold 6 pounds.
6 pounds of water. Wow.
How's that for a watering system?
So if you see a guy out in the desert carrying a log on his shoulder, you know what's up.
Yeah, that's it. So in my garden, I've got a whole bunch of logs buried down 3 feet, so they can soak up the water, and I don't have as much watering problems as I used to.
I did that too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, when we first moved in, I dug down 3 feet in
Uh-huh.
my whole garden plot and just filled it with wood. Just
Uh-huh.
filled it, and it really hurts that soil for the first couple years
Mhm.
as the wood is rotting. You know, because it takes nutrients out of the soil to
It
do
sucks
that
up
rotting.
nitrogen, huh?
Yeah, yeah, but then after it all settles down, Yeah, I don't have much problems with water in that area. It's really awesome technique. They call it Hugelkraft,
Mm-hmm.
burying the wood under the soil. But now I'm onto the biochar. I think that's a better, quicker way to get the same effect.
Yeah. So sometimes before I bury a log in the garden, I'll throw it in the duck's kiddie pool and let it soak up the duck poop and
Oh, nice.
slurry. Bond says hello to you, Mac.
Hello, Bond. I am doing great. Thanks, man.
And,
Yeah, Hugel culture. Hugel culture.
Yeah, Hugel culture, yeah.
Put your umlauts where you want.
Rich soil covered at all times. Not only are we going to change the soil surface a different color, so it's no longer black and it's no longer going to be quite as hot and quite as prone to evaporation, we're also stopping that evaporation from even taking place by putting a lid on it. And furthermore, when it does actually rain or we give our garden a little sprinkle, these wood chips are going to act just like a sponge. They're going to soak up all the moisture that is available around them, and then they're going to slowly evaporate it over time, which is basically like having a little automatic watering system in our garden all the time, doing the Lord's work for us. Again, because we as lazy gardeners have a whole bunch of stuff that's a whole lot more exciting to do than daily garden chores. But speaking of wood chips, mulch, and lazy gardening in general, this incredible tool for helping us to mitigate our watering and weeding needs can also really inhibit our seed starting journey. Wood chips are our secret weapon for not only holding the moisture that we need in the soil, but also creating the drainage that we need in our soil to make sure our plants don't drown. But they are not actually a great growing medium for tiny little baby seeds. If we just grab a random handful of the wood chips that are on top of my soil right here, well, some of these are quite large. How is a tiny baby seed going to actually move this wood chip out of its way if we plant a seed underneath it? It's not. This was actually a huge issue I faced when I was first learning the deep wood chip method, and figuring it out took a bit of experimentation. Lucy, what are you doing back there, girl? My pig is making it very known that she wants a snack. Should we give her one? I think so.
Yes. Feed the
Lucy,
pig.
what are you yelling about? Do you and the donkeys want some little garden treats, huh? Do you? Here you go, Lucy. Here. Hey, let Lucy have some, you little jerks. Hey, Lucy. Lucy. Hey, Lucy. You want some garden treats? Some chickweed? Some dead nettle? Oh, yeah. I talk a lot about mental health on this channel because I think it is so important to talk about the hard things that we as humans face. Because if you're wrestling with hard stuff, you are not alone, and I think it's dumb to pretend that any of us ever are. I discovered BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video, 5 years ago when I was going through a massively tough time behind the scenes, and I needed someone to talk to about it. But BetterHelp gave me the opportunity to, from the convenience and comfort of my home, fill out a quick quiz. They paired me with a therapist, and I was off to the races. Since then, my Monday night ritual has been to settle in with a cup of tea, my favorite blankie, and to talk about hard stuff with someone who actually knows what they're talking about. BetterHelp makes talking to a therapist easy. It's easy to take the online quiz.
Yeah, you take the online quiz and you open up a YouTube page, and BetterHelp says, "And how do you feel about that?" And then BetterHelp says, "Now how do you feel about that?"
I thought she
You're
was
not
going to talk about.
listening.
I thought she was going to talk about how good that golden retriever was for her mental health.
Probably better.
That matches you with a
Let's move along here. Okay, mistake number 3.
10% off of your first month of therapy. When talking about finding the right growing medium for our seeds, I found it's easiest to just grab a bag of potting soil to help illustrate exactly what I'm talking about. This potting soil is just 50% aged compost and 50% peat moss, and this is wood chips. The longer we do lazy gardening in our gardens at home, the more likely it is that this kind of stuff is gonna happen naturally within our garden. If we just rake back my thick mulchy layer that I put on top of my garden beds to overwinter them, this is a near perfect planting medium for my spring seedlings. And the coolest thing about doing that little rake back method with your mulch is that once your seedlings start coming up and you see them poking up above the soil surface, you can literally just very gently hand rake all of that mulch back into place over the plants, which will then replace all of your soil protecting, slow watering, fertility adding benefits that those mulchies were there to do in the first place. That was barely English, but I feel like you understood what I was saying. If you're really struggling to get your seeds started, it might be helpful for you to put a bag of potting soil on top of your soil surface while you're germinating your seeds, and then, mulching it after those seedlings get started. There is absolutely no shame in taking little shortcuts like that, especially if it gets you back to growing well. Okay, as we're sitting here filming and my teeth are literally chattering, I feel like this leads us nicely into my next point, which is about planting our seeds at the right time. Let's do that in my office where it's warmer.
I like this
We're
lady
defrosting a little bit. This leads me very conveniently to the next big mistake people make, which is planting their seeds at the wrong time. First and foremost, if you're looking for maximum germination of your seeds and you're buying seeds in a seed packet, very often the soil conditions, the sunlight conditions, all that stuff is going to be located on the back of your packet. So you can just look at this and say, oh, the soil temperature for beets needs to be 60 to 70 degrees, so I probably shouldn't plant my beet seeds in February in Montana when there's still 6 inches of snow on the ground. I know so many of us are so sick of being cooped up for the winter, and we cannot wait to get out in our gardens. But one of my favorite things to do on the first sunny day of the year used to be going and sitting in the parking lot of a home center and watching everyone walk out proudly with their new plant starts ready to put those little bad boys right in their garden, knowing that they'd have to come back 3 weeks later to buy those things again and start over in their gardens. Here in Middle Tennessee, we have 12 seasons, not 4, and we are currently in our second spring, also known as the Spring of Deception, because we're about to have another week and a half of snow, freezing cold temperatures, and then maybe in March it actually might be the right time to plant most of this stuff for our garden. But here's the thing. As lazy gardeners, one of the best tips we can apply to our lazy gardening techniques is to plant things just a little bit later than our seed packet or our weather says that we should be able to do. Because constantly being on the early side of planting is not only putting our plants at risk of germinating early and then freezing in those surprise last thaws.
I have done this very thing, Mac. Every year I lose about 1,000 tobacco plants because I'm so excited. I get them to sprout up and then, damn it, it freezes and I lose them all. I got to start over again.
Me too. I'm
So this
listening to
year,
her and I'm thinking right now I believe that we're not going to get any more freezes, so I'm planting like crazy. And I'm probably wrong. Historically, I've been wrong planting this early. It's okay. One day I'll learn.
right. You know that old rhyme, April freezes, kill May flowers.
Yeah. It's really true, though. Last year it snowed on Easter.
Really? Oh my God. Did anything survive in your garden?
Yeah. I mulch so much that it's not as fruitful as it would be otherwise, and I have to plant more later. But I mulch so much that some stuff survives.
Mm-hmm.
And I always make sure to plant a lot of fall, plant in the fall as well for the spring. So I always have stuff happening. And right now there's all kinds of stuff happening, but some of it's going to most likely die. when it freezes again. Not if, but when. When we get 3 more inches of snow.
Black Betty Rambalam.
Oh, Black Betty, Marmalade.
But also, early in the season, the doubling power of the sun, the thing that makes the plants actually grow, is a lot less than later on in the season. And in that, by trying to sneak our plants into the ground way earlier in the season, we're not actually getting ourselves as far ahead as we seem to think. Because plants that are planted too early are going to be far more susceptible to disease, pest attacks, and other things that making our plants thrive really hard. Literally just because there are fewer hours in the day of warm sunlight on those plants, which actually have potential to help those plants.
Oh, I can see why insects would attack the plants that are planted too early, because there's nothing else available.
Better fight that stuff off if we just exercise a little patience and plant things a little later than the earliest possible moment we could put them in the ground. Knowing that I wanted to have a little higher success rate of the seeds that I was planting in my own garden, and also knowing that I'm not that great at knowing what to plant when, just naturally, at the beginning of every season, I organize all my seeds into this handy dandy seed sorter in the order that I should actually plant them throughout the year, which makes it a total no-brainer for me to come in week after week throughout the growing season and grab the next little group of seeds, toss them in the garden at the right time, and that alone has helped me massively.
That's gigantic. I'm
Let's
writing that
pop
down.
up to my indoor greenhouse so we can talk a little bit more about.
All right, now where do we get these little handy dandy things?
I know. It doesn't matter. Just organizing them by like the time to plant them is such a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. I should do that.
But
From now on, I'm going to do that.
but if you did that, Mac, then you would not be an improvisational gardener.
That's true, which is really what I am. I go out there and I know I'm going to find bare soil, so I always like fill my pockets with whatever seeds I can grab that, these might grow. I got to put these on the bare soil, you know?
I do that too, yeah.
Yeah. Something will grow. I don't know. I like that idea anyway, though. I need to get my act together.
Yeah,
Hey, Mac?
Yeah.
Are you still at that restaurant? What are you doing these days?
Oh, well, I'm getting used to my new gig. I left the restaurant at the end of the year,
Pizza
and
man.
I went through a lot of time of looking for a new job, and I landed at a I landed at a brew pub that's right down the road from where I live.
Oh, fucking cool.
So I'm like in the middle of my community, Sean, and it's like it's a really comfortable environment, really great staff, and I'm meeting all kinds of people that are my neighbors, and
Oh, cool.
I can walk to work, and it's just it's incredible.
That's
I really feel like I landed in a great place. But
Do you have to show up early, Mac?
no, but I still do.
Well, the reason I ask is because years ago, my business was just 2 blocks away
Yeah.
from my house, and I would go into work before the traffic, and I heard something amazing, my own footfalls. It was really cool to hear my own footsteps, because once the traffic starts, you can't hear your footfalls.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Anyway, so it was kind of meditative.
I like that a lot. Now, I showed up early today. I was the first one there today. And because on Tuesday, I'm going to open and close by myself for my first time, like without having another guy there, And so I wanted to like make my own checklist and kind of go over it real slow and make sure I'll remember everything on Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
And it was like that. It was like really peaceful, and but I didn't think about my own footsteps. But that's true. That's a rare thing you get to hear.
You hear that?
Yeah, I heard that.
That's not
Lightsaber?
footsteps. That's
So
Sean's
that's-
motorcycle brigade going outside of his window.
I swear to God, dude, it's like the Indy 500 here in the afternoon. I don't know where they came from. It is amazing. Probably the last 2 years it's been. And they blow right by the courthouse. So, like, you go by the library, they'll get a ticket, right? Because there's a cop hiding in the bush somewhere.
Oh, sure.
Right? But over here by the courthouse, they're right out in front of the courthouse, and there's no tickets handed out. It's amazing. Pretty
The
cool.
last place they'd expect them.
Yeah,
speed.
right under their nose, you know. I love it.
I'm doing good, Sean. Thanks for asking. I'm really doing
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
man.
I was just curious because I know you were tossing around the food truck idea or something. You had different things rolling around.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
Yeah.
really sure
I think-
what you.
I mean,
you
that's not.
headed?
It's not like that's out of the question anymore. But I don't like.
I picture that, dude, right next to the brew pub. Max. Oh God, that'd be kick ass, bro. Your own little food truck.
I think when it comes to like pursuing a mild and quiet life,
I know.
owning your own business is really
It's
not
a
a good
lot.
path towards that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, I'm in a good spot. What I really been thinking a lot about though is how the time between jobs was for me, and how much I counted on God, and how much trust. I had this whole experience where, like, I mean, people thought I was crazy. I was running out of money, and I
Yeah.
wasn't afraid. I just wasn't
Isn't that-
afraid.
Isn't that
I-
cool? What a freedom that is.
This was a new experience for me. I don't know. I don't know if other people have had that, but
Oh yeah, when I had that, I would check the couch cushions.
I did it, Ace. I had a little mason jar change. I rolled it all up and went to the bank.
You had stuff buried out in the garden, didn't you, Mac?
Yeah, Sean. He took in a big box of turnips and said, "Can I get some toothpaste for this?"
Whatever you got.
He was in the black market.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be fine. I knew the worst that would happen is I would die.
Yeah.
What else you got?
And as Paul says, death is not mortifying. But wait a minute, it is. That's the very definition of death. Oh, he said affliction is not mortifying, or something like that.
Death is indeed mortifying. That's all it's got.
Seed starting and the last few problems so many people seem to have. Oh, the alpacas are putting on a show for us. How nice. Hi, buddy.
Alpacas!
This is
Making
porn.
more
Oh,
alpacas.
Lucy. Making a nest. Lucy, where you going with your nest, Bubba? There are about 1,000 reasons why I would say direct sowing seeds into your garden is better than transplanting plants into your garden. However, there are also a lot of reasons why transplanting just makes a lot more sense. First, if you have a short growing season, you might need to start your plants inside. And for the same cost as buying a year's worth of garden starts, I made this really fancy, not that fancy setup, which makes starting seeds really, really easy. I got all this stuff from Bootstrap Farmer. Check out their website. It's a great resource for gardeners. Here in Middle Tennessee, we have a really long growing season, and knowing how much of a better start our longer season crops actually get when we start them in the soil, out in the garden, where they're going to be already established and adapted to the soil. They're not going to have transplant shock. I actually have a really different reason than most folks do for having an indoor growing setup like this. And that is that midsummer here in Tennessee, it is so much easier for me to control the moisture conditions and everything else I need to get my mid-season crops to actually germinate well and then transplant them out into the garden than dragging around soaker hoses and trying to manage such a big plot of seed germination ground in the middle of the summer heat. So that was actually my motivation to set this up rather than getting a really early start in my season like it might be for people in colder climates. However, a lot of the things that make this system so controllable are actually really easily repeatable out in the garden as well, especially if you're gardening on a smaller scale than we are. We're going to revisit our solo cup one last time here to really drive home the importance of soil moisture content. This cup has a plastic bottom, so it's not going to drain. A lot like hard clay soils or really, really compacted soils are going to not be very good at drainage. When you're getting ready to put your seed in a soil, a really helpful quick test to do is to just pour some water on the soil and see what happens. If your water sits on top of that soil for more than 10 to 20 seconds, you'll want to mix a little bit more organic matter into the planting medium so that that can help wick away some of that extra moisture. If you pour your water in and it just soaks right in, your soil's really, really thirsty and it might need a long drink before germination. So you could put your sprinkler hose on overnight to really saturate the soil. But in a dream world, you spritz it on, it soaks it up, and about 5 minutes later you can come back. You can feel that it's moist, but you can't squeeze any water out. What we absolutely don't want is soil that is hydrophobic, which means it's dried out too much and there's just no way for the soil to hold in moisture, or soil that is so poorly draining that it's just gonna keep the feet of your little plants wet all the time. And just like a human, when we have wet socks for too many days in a row, we start to get the sniffles. Before
I hate wet socks.
What?
We used to put bread bags inside of over our socks into our boots so our feet wouldn't get wet in New Hampshire when I was growing up. Ever do that? Bread bags.
My mom did that. Yeah, bread bags over the socks.
Yep. Can you believe it?
Did it work?
Yeah.
Or did your feet sweat too much?
No. It's, slushy, snowy, wet, nastiness, and your shoes would get wet, but your feet would be dry when you got home.
Perfect.
Before we leave, I'm going to give you some rapid fire last minute tips to help you along this process. Some seeds, especially your cold weather crops, like to be cold before you plant them. And we can artificially do this by a process called cold stratification, which is a very fancy way of saying you can take your cold weather loving crops and put those seed packets in the fridge for a week before you plant them, and that will increase your germination rate. I feel like this one might be too obvious to even need to say, but we're gonna say it anyway just in case. If you watched my Weeds Are Good video and you've let weeds take over in your garden for...
What? Weeds? Look at that. She looks like a bodybuilder.
Totally.
all the reasons
How would you like to get punched by her?
Yeah. She probably uses a scythe all the time.
Maybe so.
Ace.
we said that's a great thing to do. It's really important to remember that plants need a few things to be able to thrive. They need soil, moisture, access to sunlight, and the nutrients that they need to survive. And if they are competing with other things, it's going to be a lot harder for them to thrive. So if you have a very weedy garden and you're struggling to get your plants to thrive, maybe pull back some of those weeds or chop and drop or do whatever you can simply to reduce the competition and give them a better chance at thriving. One last super easy way to remove any possible variables when it comes to soil nutrition, especially if you're doing your own composting and potting soil mix, is to do a soil test. Redman Homesteader has a super affordable, super easy to perform soil test that will give you all of the information you need to make sure that your soil has everything that your plants actually need to be able to not just survive, but to truly thrive. I think the most important thing to remember as you're getting growing this season is that experimentation is the absolute best way to learn things. Try some stuff, fail a couple times, and remember not to think of failure as failure, but as an opportunity to figure out what didn't work this time so you can try something else next time. It's just gardening, friends, and it's supposed to be fun. And our ancestors did a really great job at growing everything they ate without the internet or a bunch of fancy tips or tricks. Have fun this year. Holy cow, it's cold. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers!
Hey, you forgot your camera.
She's a good marketer. She rolls her advertising right into the script there.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
And this is one of my favorites. I've seen this one many times. Port Richey, Florida, boys and girls.
Nice.
Just a regular old neighborhood. With music. They don't have a barbershop there. That's his front yard. Isn't that cool, man?
All right, guys, what's going on? So much needed, much overdue follow-up with Jim Kobyleski. He's back from Maine. He's crushing it here in the market garden. Said he's just starting to kind of pick up over there. You know, he's having some great weeks. Sales have been pretty decent. Want to show you guys what he's growing, where he's taking it, and hopefully we don't get any sirens here in the background today. And you know, I had a ton of comments on that last video with Jim about the sirens and the police and this and that. Like, Jim is like literally right next door to the police station. That red roof you see is like a building where they keep vehicles. You know, there's 100 cop cars over there in that parking lot. There's a police station right here. So, you know, if there's an emergency, this is where they, you know, turn on their sirens and fly out of. So, you know, neither Jim or I noticed those sirens in that last video. If I would have, I probably would have stopped and reshot that for y'all. So sorry about that. I've had 100 comments about those sirens. I'll be a little bit more careful here in the future.
Love that music.
Those carrots are coming up.
Carrots, you said?
Yep.
How old is this bed, Jim?
Let me think. These are probably 10 days old, the carrots. And then this was planted probably 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks now?
Yeah, so it'll be a shift from what we're going to see over there to over here. Probably in 2 weeks, this will be going to Tasty Tuesday.
This is 2 weeks planting?
2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Soil blocks.
Oh, okay,
You know,
okay.
So soil blocks are big. And then this is when I first got here. And see how the armadillo just went down the path?
Oh, he was just in here this morning, huh?
Yeah.
Eating all your worms.
Yeah, but there's more worms in the past. That's telling me I might want to use those. Yeah, I'm getting a little order ready for the health food store.
Okay, nice.
So let me go over there.
How many days a week are you delivering to those guys?
Well, some days, or some weeks, 3 times.
Really?
Yeah, because they just can't keep it stocked.
Oh my God, you guys! Look
How
at
long
those
have these been in the
radishes.
ground, Jim?
Those are gorgeous.
Let me back you up.
I want those radishes.
I love a good radish.
Times?
Really?
Yeah, 'cause
Can you see it now?
The tops are so good too. Oh, they're huge. They're beautiful.
they just can't keep it stocked.
Man, that is beautiful.
How long have these been in the ground, Jim?
I don't know, we'll have to look at the
Look at the tag.
tag. I'd say probably 25 days. maybe even because they're supposed to be 21. And these sell really well for them. Because Cindy brought him some radishes, just the regular kind, and they didn't sell. So I don't know, they like the French breakfast.
Really?
Yeah, I guess there's a French name for this, Diavagan or something, but it's French breakfast is the easy one to remember. They're so red.
Now you were at Tasty Tuesdays yesterday. What did you do if you had anything left extra there? Do you take that to Wrights?
I did, but I was expecting, I over harvested so I could have stuff for Wrights, but then Tasty Tuesday wiped me out. All I had was arugula really left for them.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that people show up like that. I mean, that was probably my record day yesterday.
At Tasty Tuesdays?
Yeah, by myself. Like last year I was doing it with Michaela with help, and I broke 700 yesterday.
700 yesterday?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that's for a little market. That's pretty cool.
So this will be a good month.
Yeah, I'd say the next, I'd say it's $1,000 a month for a couple months if things keep up like they are. $1,000 a week, excuse me.
Yeah. And that's without too much value-added stuff from Maine, right?
No, well, there's still been that a little, because the garlic is always good. And, you sell a couple blueberries. I got them canned blueberries. They work out great.
So Jim Kobaleski has a front yard farm in Florida, and he has 5 or 10 acres in Maine. And since it's colder in Maine, he grows cold crops like garlic. I
Gotcha.
don't know what else he grows, but he has a different farming practice in Maine than he does in his front yard. In Maine, he takes the scythe and he harvests a whole field full of grass, and he uses that to keep things warm in that cold climate. Yes? What? What?
I think it was Jim. He sounded like Sean.
And then behind you is arugula. That's been cut once.
This
and that's coming back.
Nice.
Man, look at that.
Are you mixing that bunch up so it won't all just be the one variety then, huh?
Yeah, it's kale bouquet.
Kale bouquet.
You
Those aren't all kales,
No,
are
not
they?
kale. Excuse me, mustard bouquet.
Mustard bouquet.
I do
okay.
bouquets, and I try to plant so that there's a variety, in the row, so you can pick it that way. When I'm really trying to be more efficient, I'll pick one of each variety or a bunch of each variety, and then go put them bouquets together on a table in there. And this bunch was planted as minis.
Mini blocks?
Yeah, because I had extra, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I just went ahead and put minis in. I didn't expect anything to happen, but it did.
He's
I'm
talking
sure
about
folks are wondering, how was your
blocks.
sweet potato harvest this year?
I'd say
Say that again.
blocks. He's talking about blocks. He mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
It's a way of starting plants and transplanting them. It's like a very intensive, very coordinated way to maximize production in a garden. So you're always got something growing in the seedling
Right. So what
chamber.
what he does, boys and girls, he's got this metal box with a lever on top, and so he puts soil in there and he compacts it down just a little bit, and then he puts it upside down and he pulls out this block of soil. So he'll make 500 blocks. So he's got 500, what we would call, little garden pots, right? But they're just soil blocks. So he doesn't have to uproot it and give it root shock, So he just plants the whole soil block in the soil. And it gives each plant a head start instead of going through root shock.
That's
Ace,
This is
you
Ace,
know
go ahead.
Sean to Ace, you know how I know the garden's thriving?
How?
If you notice when you're playing it, you can hear all these birds chirping around there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. maybe there has something to do with the thriving of the garden. So, yeah, I'm just guessing. Ace.
Well, wait till you see the hawks fly in and attack him.
The best one ever.
Best one ever.
Yep. And
Wow.
you know, there was a lot of uglies again, but I'd say conservatively 3,000 pounds.
3,000 pounds. Jeez.
Yeah, and but only probably 25% of those were pretty. But you know, Rice is selling uglies now.
They're taking them too?
They're
At the
taking
health food
uglies.
store.
Yeah.
Really?
But to have the diversity here, so that you know they're not just one block. You know, it's not all that efficient, but you know, it gives you the colors. You know, which is really cool, and that's one of my focuses is to have it look beautiful for the neighborhood.
Bit of an aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I don't know. There's probably 10 different kinds of mustards here.
Mac, are you jealous?
Jim, so when you got back in town this
I mean, isn't that just the most beautiful yard?
I'm not jealous, but I'm hungry.
Uh-huh.
Like I love it. I just love it. I want to go out there and pick that with him. And you know what you do with those mustard greens is you just steam them a little bit and splash some balsamic vinegar on them. And
Oh, yeah.
oh my God, it's heavenly. That's all it needs. Just a little wilt in the steam and a little splash of balsamic, and you'll just die and go to heaven. I mean,
But what about
you know,
hell?
in the vernacular.
What about hell? What about the lake of fire?
Maybe those radishes are spicy enough to get you there.
year you harvested sweet potatoes, did you have a lot of turmeric to harvest?
Yeah, I probably filled, I don't know, probably 50 pounds.
50 pounds?
Yeah, and I'm selling it slowly. But mine wasn't anything compared to Mark, so I gotta figure that out and talk to him. I think he's planting deep
Deep in watering.
and water, yeah.
Yeah.
But now I got the irrigation system here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's irrigation. We've got Blue Flag's one, Blue Flag in the corner, all along there, so I could run drip tube.
Are you running it?
No, I haven't
Okay.
got my act together yet.
Okay, so it needs a little retrofit.
Yeah, because I think there's 4 zones.
And you're still running off of that well
Yeah.
with a little bit of salt in it?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
swear that's why the kale, or not the kale, the chard
Yeah.
is doing so well.
From the salt.
Yep.
So you attribute that to it. Wow.
But nothing else is faltering from it, so it must be really low. When you think about local food, you know, I'm growing this with the Newport Richie compost and harvesting it and taking it 3 blocks away to the health food store. You know, that is a really tight circle. You know, it seems like a lot of people that are starting to do local, they get well known and they start expanding. You know, because like Tide Mill's going to Portland now.
So it's
Not
not so
that-
local anymore.
Yeah, not that that's bad, but it's just quite different.
No,
Yeah,
it's
there's
bad.
that
Just say
jasmine
it,
blue
Jim.
again too.
Ooh.
Very gorgeous.
Say that, Mac?
He didn't want to say it, but he said, not that that's bad, but it is bad. It's bad for kale to be flown from Florida to Portland, Oregon. It's ridiculous. That's very bad.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing good about that. Yeah, come on. So, but he didn't want to say. He was like, it's not that it's bad, it's just different. No, it's bad.
Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Yeah,
says Seinfeld.
right.
So now we're on to the kale.
Yep, kale bouquets. And this is that rainbow lacinato. So I think Frank Morton bred both of these. So he must have somehow got it to straighten out more. Supposedly one of them's got a cabbage background to it too.
Really?
Yeah. And then this is a traditional dinosaur.
Wow. It looks like 26 inches there.
And you know, I always think that figure of bunches what fills my hand nicely.
Yeah, there's no weight to that or
No,
not the deer
it's just
madness or
whatever I
anything.
got. Most of my stuff is never weighed, it's all eyeball. There's some beets. So I've never been able to grow beets either, and that's going to be a nice beet.
What do you mean?
That's saltwater too, they're in the same family.
So you think the salt water's helping the beets also?
The same family as the chard and the spinach. I've never been able to grow spinach. I haven't grown spinach all that well lately, but it still grows. Whereas before, I couldn't get it to do anything. But this is why it's hard to work with somebody else, because, I mean, I can hardly find what's all here. You know? I mean, I forgot these are here.
Oh, you forgot the kales were over here?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot I had red Russian over here. So that's going to help add to it. Because I'd like to get 5. And these are going to start getting shaded out by the Chinese broccoli. That's that Happy Rich. That's the best one to grow in Florida, I'd say, out of all the sprouting broccoli.
Happy Rich.
Happy Rich. Because Suho's down here, and they're not as big.
Oh, you've already cut those.
Oh, so when you grow these, you want to, it'll put up a little teeny head like that Arcadia is now. Cut that really quick so then it goes sideways.
You want the size.
Yeah, if you let it won't do good if you don't do that. Oh yeah, we'll have plenty. Won't have to rob too deeply. But the idea would be to kind of take leaves that, see this one's kind of going over to shade that out, so do that.
Basically just thinning.
Yeah, thinning, so that interplanting works better that way.
How much watering you doing this time of year, Jim?
Like last year I was doing a lot, this year hardly any.
Hardly
I've
any.
watered maybe, this whole area maybe 8 times.
8 times since October,
Yeah.
and we're into the 3rd week of January.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
if we looked over at that new bed I did over there, you could see where I put a little bit of mulch,
Mm-hmm.
and then I didn't mulch anything because it ain't mulch yet. It's night and day difference on the moisture it's holding. I mean, it's amazingly different. And I mean, that's what we'd expect, but to actually see it again and again is pretty cool. Oh, and I forgot, I get this. This is a new one. It's not very prolific, but it's called purple kale, and it's a kale that is purple.
That's a kale?
Yep,
Wow.
that's pretty cool. So that's another one I added, yeah.
So kale is just as popular as it always has been, huh?
It comes and goes. I don't know if it's the juicers are still buying it, but I had a couple neighbors that she just went vegan, and she came late to the market and bought out pretty much everything I had left for kale, and took a lot of arugula too, which
Wow.
was great. So yeah, I can see definitely, this community could support, probably at least 10 of people doing what I'm doing.
There's room for more gems.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the Jim Kovalevsky delivery service.
What all have you used this trailer for? Harvesting citrus?
Citrus was the first thing I got it for, and then I was bringing seaweed from the beach.
Okay.
I haven't used seaweed much for lately because I've seen it stays forever. So I think there is a use for it, but I've got some compost that's at least 3 years old, and digging through it, there's still whole leaves of that seagrass.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty
And
unbelievable.
then I
That
did-
stuff doesn't break down, huh?
No, and so I'm thinking as a mulch, that would be a really good thing because it doesn't disappear.
Wow.
And it also, remember when I did the testing, trading the seaweed for peat in my soil block mix?
Yeah.
And I had 0 germination in the seaweed.
Yeah.
So it's a mulch that could repel.
What do you think? It's killing weeds?
Yeah.
Really?
It stopped germination.
Wow.
And then stayed around a long time, so it could be the new mulch of the future.
Wow.
But then we just over harvested like anything. Just like
Yeah.
cypress. Not a bad way to spend a morning.
Not bad at all, Jim. I've only been recording for 2 minutes, so like we're almost there, right?
Yep.
Wow.
took a break.
Mild and quiet.
Yeah.
Jim, this is kind of living the dream, isn't it?
Kinda.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think there's no kind of there.
Well-
This is living.
yeah, it is. Riding your bike around town
Like, this is
Lots
your
of fossil
responsibility for the day, to deliver some produce by bike, huh?
and grow some more.
And grow some more.
Yeah. Plus, I get some exercise.
So this is
Different kind.
this is local, like
This is ultra local.
ultra local, yeah. 50% of your food's going within a
All right, just so you'll know that the ACO show is, biblically oriented. Like,
and grow some more.
check this out.
Plus, I get some exercise.
So this
Different kind.
this is
The Community Congregational Church, UCC. See? We'll keep you informed. What do they believe at the local Community Congregational Church? Oh, just the usual. Free will, eternal hell, immortal soul, and permanent annihilation. Or something like that. Oh, Trinity. Let's not forget Trinity.
local, like
This is ultra local.
ultra local, yeah. 50% of your food's going within a mile of your house. The other 50% goes just to the next county below us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Most of it, and I'd say 75% goes to between the library, Tasty Tuesday.
75%? Really? So you're moving that much more over in this
Yeah.
local market. I like it. Jim, is this where all the magic happens?
Yeah, I mean, I've got like a greenhouse here. South face.
What?
I can open the windows when it's cold.
So you're not using the wall anymore?
No, well, I'll use the wall when I won't be able to get all the seedlings in here, but just for sprouting.
So show everybody how you're starting these.
So these are the mini blocks, and then they'll actually go up to, this one didn't germinate. So probably tomorrow or the next day I'll start and I'll make the big blocks, and then you just put that in there and push it down. But these are actually blocks Jimmy made for me that he did tomatoes in, because I'm not sure how soon I'm going to be leaving, and it might be worth doing some shoulder season crops.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try some tomatoes and just see what happens. I self-sowed some tomatoes too, because I've seen the best tomatoes I've ever had are the ones that show up wherever they sprout.
They see themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try some. I mean, I would just, who knows? I don't know, something about moving them might make them not food, but. So, now, when I mulched that, I had a little left over. Can you see that spot that's got mulch on it? I mean, it looks a lot the same, but it's raised.
Okay.
Now see, here it's just kind of dry, right? As you get deeper, it's better, but watch when you go underneath here. It's just like really moist, the difference.
And that's the new mulch you think that's retaining that?
I think, yeah.
Now, Jim, you said you actually have somebody coming to get the moringa pods?
The moringa pods, they call them drumsticks. It's a doctor, my ex-wife's mom's doctor, and he's from India, and he said once he saw that, he's coming over like every Sunday and getting like a handful, and he'll give me $20 for them. He says the best drumsticks he's ever had, even from the India.
Let's go check it out. Wow.
Because that's the one that I
Is he
think
cooking them or using them for medicinal
he cooks,
purposes?
no, he cooks them. It's all part of they got 3 different dishes they use.
Really?
Yeah, they moved, and he had a specific size he wanted, which is a lot bigger than I thought.
So is he getting them at the green stage?
No, he's getting them. This might be just a little big, but this would be like this was perfect, that size.
I mean, that thing's like
I know, but what they do, I
heat.
guess what they do is cut it up, and then when you put it in your dish, and then the inside gets soft, and then you strip it out, the inside out.
Wow.
You know, like you do with artichokes.
Yeah.
So he was all fired up. And
Is
he
that
said
the only thing you've ever been on the market so far on the moringa? Or have you
No,
done
I
anything
used
with
to
the
do.
leaves?
I used to do the powder.
Used to powder it. That's right.
And I used to every once in a while. I'm like, now they're growing. Considering how cold it's been, it's amazing. But I'll take some leaves, and just hang them in the stall and sell them for $2 a bunch. But
And you've had frost here a couple times, right?
right, but it's all out in the
Spotty.
open areas. Yeah.
I mean, this is exposed. It's not supposed to handle it.
Well, again, the frost. It's just on the ground. I don't know how that works, but up in the air, it has to get a lot colder
To actually damage it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Jim Kowaleski crushing it here in the Market Garden. This place is looking pretty epic right now. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, check out my other videos with Jim. They'll be in the description down below. And most importantly, pound that dirt.
And now we have the outro music. And a montage. Great television production.
Very nice.
Man, that's inspiring.
Where is that, Ace?
That's in Florida, a town called Port Richey.
Port Richey. That's on the Tampa side, I think, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Good call.
On the golf side.
I'm thinking, yeah, I was in Tampa. Port Richey sounds familiar. I'm thinking it's south of Tampa, but I could be wrong.
But the big thing that fascinates me is the guys who do that kind of gardening. They can make up to $100,000 a year per acre.
Jesus.
Wow.
I don't think he makes that much because he didn't stick around. He goes to Maine half the year, and he has a low budget. He doesn't need. Oh, I was in line one time in Santa Barbara when I lived there. I had a lot of friends who were just like Jim Kowaleski. They were all backyard farmers, and they sold at the farmers market. And I was in line with two farmers at the grocery store, and they were talking to each other. And one farmer was struggling with money, right? And he says, how do you do it? How do you make this farming business work? And the other farmer says, you just cut your expenses so you don't need the money.
Yes. Exactly. What are you spending all your money on?
Yeah. Kind of like the Greg Judy. He was a cattle farmer, and he went bankrupt because he was doing what all of his cattle farming friends did. He bought himself a brand new truck and all this expensive equipment. He had more debt than he knew what to do with, and he went bankrupt. Then he learned how to cut his expenses and do mob grazing. And with mob grazing, he doesn't need a bunch of cowboys to round up the cows. He just whistles at them or yelps, or yodels. He yodels at them.
Yeah.
And he moves them from pasture to pasture with just by himself. He doesn't need. And the cows look forward to moving to the new pasture because he only lets them sit there one day, so they don't eat the grass down to the dirt.
Wow.
And now he has 1,000 cows and 1,000 acres
Jesus.
that he owns or controls in Missouri. And you can sell a cow for what, $1,200 within a year you get the cow as a calf, and within a year you can sell it for $1,000. So 1,000 cows times 1,000, how much money is that?
I don't know, like $1 billion.
There's a lot of zeros in there, Ace.
Always strikes me how, like, the common denominator is just relaxing and letting letting it happen. I mean, this guy that we just watched talking about how, like, he's convinced that it's the salt in his Florida water that's helping some of his crops, That's startling. You want to keep salt. Salt's like, you don't want salt in your garden. That's traditionally poison,
Yeah.
But this guy's got salt in his water and he's watching it work. He's not working his ass off trying to keep the salt, which he's surrounded by salt water. He's not going to keep salt out of his water,
Yeah.
Instead, he watches it work and
his crops don't have any high blood pressure neither.
Don't have to add any salt to them.
Salt-free vegetables. Oh, it tastes salty. I wonder why.
And the lady before that talking about crowding or doing broadcasting, planting, and I mean, she kept on talking about lazy gardening, but that really does, it pays off.
Mm-hmm.
You relax, you participate in the garden, and it will thrive. It's amazing. Might even be holy.
Yeah. Without the orbs.
Inside joke, boys and girls. You have to stick around the ACO Club to understand what that joke was about. Up next is Roost Out. Roost Out.
Oh, right.
You know
boy.
Roost Out?
Oh, boy, do I know Ruth Stout.
Oh, my God.
Here we go. This is
She's
fantastic.
famous for being a lazy gardener.
She's fantastic. She's my hero.
Hey, Sean, there's your birds.
I was born in Kansas in 1884 and lived in Topeka till I was 18, moved to New York, and lived in New York until I was 45, never once wishing that I could have a garden. Then my husband, we had been married just a few months, and he said, would you like to live in the country? And without even knowing that I would, I said, oh, yes. And he bought this place, and we hadn't been here more than 10 minutes, so I wasn't out there looking at the lilac bush and the apple trees and so on. And immediately, I got thrilled about gardening. Knew nothing about it. Had a place twice too big, plowed up, and my brother and one or two other people told me what to do, and I did it for almost 15 years, according to the way everybody else was doing it, with commercial fertilizer and poison spray and plowing. Hired a man to come and plow, and the plowman was always late, and I was always dying to get out there and get things in earlier than I could. Now, this is how this happened, the way I garden now. One morning in early April, I went out to the garden, couldn't do anything, just went out to shed a tear because I couldn't begin to plant. The plowman hadn't come. I walked over to the asparagus, and I said, we don't have to plow for you. Why do we have to plow for the other vegetables? And the asparagus said, you don't. Go ahead and plant. If the asparagus had said that to anybody with any sense, they wouldn't have paid any attention. They would have said, well, you're a perennial, because asparagus, like a tree or like a rose bush, just comes up every year. But anyway, since I wasn't very smart, I just ran and got my seeds and planted them, and that's been going on for 35 years. I never had a plowman again. If I told you...
Oh, by the way, one of my heroes in the farming world is an outfit called Singing Frogs Farm.
Okay.
And they do about 100,000 a year per acre. They have 8 acres. And they were using a plow. And so the culture here among the guys who do no-till farming is that a plow goes through and it plows the soil, and it ruins the soil because there's a bunch of microbes down there, and they've got their little homes built already, right? And you come along with the plow, and it's like destroying their homes, and it kills the microbes, and it disturbs the earthworms, and you're disturbing everything, right?
It's terrible.
Periodic disturbance is okay, but for a purpose, but not just regular plowing like these guys did. Anyway, at Singing Frogs Farm, they were doing about 35,000 a year per acre, and then their tractor broke.
And then they started doing $100,000.
Yes. Yes, exactly. They couldn't afford to fix the tractor, so they started doing it all by hand, which ended up being no-till gardening. and uh, and now they're cranking it out
Fantastic.
at 100,000 a year per acre. And the secret of doing such volume of cash is that these guys who do this, they don't sell their crops to the commodity market. You notice that Jim Kowaleski, he was selling it to grocery stores and partly to grocery, little health food markets and partly at the farmers market. But
These
so
guys are
when you
doing the
have your own
CSA.
customer list, you can get the margin instead of having to discount your price. And so
Right.
these backyard farmers who are doing no-till who get 100,000, it's because they have their own customer list, and their customers pay the full price, like they would at the grocery store. But these guys, the farmers, get the margin instead of having to discount their price. And anyway, so their tractor broke. They had to start doing everything by hand, and lo and behold, they had more crops than they can ever imagine.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That the way I garden is very little work. You wouldn't know what I mean because you don't know what I call very little work. You might think that I meant I only work 6 hours a day instead of 12. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I garden. I have a vegetable garden, 45 by 50, in which I grow vegetables for 2 people all the year round. Sorry to make you jealous, but I haven't been in a supermarket for at least 14 years.
I'm jealous.
I grow all the vegetables for the 2 of us, freeze the surplus, and do all of that work myself. I have a few flower beds, not big ones, but a few. I do all that work. I do all of my housework, my cooking, and I answer a terrible lot of mail, and I never do any of this after 11 o'clock in the morning. Now, the hands go up, your hands are going to go up and ask me what time I get up, and my answer to that is somewhere between 6 and 8, according to when I feel like it and when I want to. And the first thing is a long, leisurely breakfast, Roman style, stretched out on the couch. But I'm all through with all of this after 11 o'clock in the morning. The reason is that I never plow or spade or cultivate or weed or hoe or use a fertilizer or use a poison spray or use a compost pile or water. I just plant and pick. The reason that I can do all this is because I keep my ground covered all year long on hay mulch, which rots, fertilizes the ground, keeps down the weeds, keeps the ground soft, and that's all there is to it. I had these turnips in here all winter long, and I've picked most of them. They look awfully little, but that's because I picked all the big ones.
Hey,
But there are a few left.
Yeah.
can you hear those birds singing that tune?
So many birds.
We'll eat those. And now we'll put in a row of parsley and a row of dill. We eat them together, so we plant them together. Why not?
Why not?
Now, all you do, all I do anyway, just sprinkle the seeds. Now, I never really cover seeds the way most people do. Little seeds like this, I just pat the row a little bit, and they're planted. And the same with the dill.
Mac, does that look like your garden?
It's very similar. It's pretty much the same thing I do. Lots of hay, very loose rows of seeds, and I almost never even bother to move the soil. I just broadcast the seeds, and I just keep doing it as it comes up. I still have so much to learn from her though, because I still weed and I still fuss and I still transplant and I still dither unnecessarily. But
Dither.
I'm a dithering gardener. But
Ace,
yeah, that looks a lot like my garden.
did you see when I put my grass seed down up in Montana? I covered it all in straw, and it really came up good.
Yeah.
It's all I did broadcast because the soils up there is terrible. It's pine forest soil, it's not great.
The straw is all the food it needs, and protection and airiness and room to grow. It's incredible. And you can also grow your own straw. It doesn't take that much. Just let the grass grow.
Yeah. It's easier to buy a bale.
That's true.
Where I am anyway.
But if you happen to let your grass grow, you can still just just cut it down and lay it down on your garden.
Yeah.
Hi, Noel. Hope you're doing well.
Since weed seeds can come up all over your garden without your fooling around planting them, I don't see why the other things can't too. So now they're planted. That's it for the parsley and dill. Now I'm going to plant some potatoes. No, I'm not going to call it planting. Everybody wouldn't dream of planting potatoes like this, but I can think of no reason why not. They grow. They come up and you get potatoes, and I guess that's what you want when you plant potatoes, is potatoes. Well, those are a little too close. See, I had these in the house all winter, and then they begin to sprout, and then instead of throwing them away, you just come and throw them on the ground. And later on in the year, you come out and pick some potatoes. It's very simple.
But wait a minute, this is too simple.
I would be willing to bet that 99 out of 100 people who see me do this wouldn't do it themselves. But that doesn't bother me. That's it. Potatoes are planted. We're through with that job. Get some hay on top of those potatoes. Otherwise, they would just lie there and die. And we don't want them to die, so we'll do this. This keeps the, you see, most people would cut those potatoes up with just one sprout in each piece of potato, but you don't have to. And I don't do anything I don't want to do unless I have to, and I don't have to. So there we are.
Well, what about your free will?
I'm covering these potatoes because if I didn't, the sun would just bake them and they would die. I just keep the sun off of them, and they will grow right through the hay. You can't do this with the hard hay, or they couldn't get through. I never put any hay on top of seeds. The hay around the garden is for two things. The main thing is to fertilize your soil, but the other thing that the hay does is keep your ground moist. In all of the over 35 years that I have planted this way, I have never had to water once. As I plant all my seeds now, I take just a little cottonseed meal and sprinkle it right with the seeds. Just in case it does rain too much, cottonseed meal supplies the nitrogen that plants have got to have. My father had a 40-acre farm, but he was superintendent of schools. He wasn't a farmer, really. However, he sold a few things like strawberries and so on. I was always top as a picker because I lived right there and I knew where the best ones were. My mother was a person who never told her 9 children what to do and what not to do. And she said, I just pay attention to my inner voice. And since I wouldn't think of doing anything that somebody else tells me, how on earth could I be so unfair as to go around telling anybody else what to do? Thee follow thy inner voice and I'll follow mine. My father was not as noticeable that way as my mother, but he also didn't interfere. My father said to me once, Ruth, it's good to think for yourself, but just once in a long time, couldn't you think like other people? And I asked him like who, and he changed the subject. My mother never scolded. But she had tricks. She could protect herself. For instance, she loved to read. But in those days, you couldn't go to your bedroom and read in the wintertime because you didn't heat your bedroom, of course. And the only place she could read in the winter would be in the living room, which was warm. With 9 children, don't tell me that you could sit there and read for a few hours and not have some of the children come in and interrupt you, you see. But she had her little trick. She'd sit down to read, and she'd have a basin of very cold water right there by her side with a washcloth in it. And if any of us would come in to ask her something, she would just say, oh, come here, come closer, dear. I didn't hear what you said. What did you... Oh, honey, your face is dirty. Do you think we'd go near when that basin of water was there? No, indeed. What I feel I know for sure is do what you want to do and don't tell other people how to behave. To make rules for other people, I just don't get it. For instance, when I helped Carrie Nation smash saloons, that was a big thing. They shouldn't do that, you see. Well, now when I take a drink, I say, forgive me, Carrie Nation, I've got to have a little drink.
Do you know who Carrie Nation was? I think Carrie Nation was an anti-alcohol woman, so she was one of the motivating factors to get the prohibition established.
Yeah.
Yes, I helped her smash saloons. Carrie Nation was a woman who lived in Kansas, and in Kansas it was against the law to sell liquor. And she went around to places and came to Topeka, where we lived. She would get a group of people together, mostly women, and they would go to a drugstore or someplace which was illegally selling liquor. By the way, I was 16 years old. It was in 1900. And this crowd of women gathered at the State House and then walked down the street. And of course, the policeman knew Carrie Nation was in town, so they kind of followed us. And Carrie Nation went up to this drugstore, which she had found out was selling liquor illegally. And she smashed one of the big panes in front, and I went and smashed the other one. And the policeman came up and arrested Carrie Nation and broke my heart. They didn't arrest me. I had to go home and go to Sunday school.
No wonder
She's
she got her heart
amazing.
broke.
There's nothing dull about gardening, I can tell you that. You saw the raccoon cage. Well, for raccoons, that outside fence doesn't do any good. They just get over that and then eat your corn. They don't eat anything else but corn. And I got so desperate trying to protect my corn that my brother built that cage for me.
No cage can keep out Will Freeman if the corn is good enough.
Oh, that's right. He's a raccoon. I forgot.
That's right.
Oh, shit, that's funny.
I don't know whether I told you how I finished one of my articles about the raccoons. I finished the article by saying, now, of course, the raccoons can't get my corn, but they're so smart that when they figure out how to go in there and open the door and go and eat my corn, I'm just going to go back to the house, get on the couch, drink 2 daiquiris instead of 1, and forget it all. Really.
Why did you give him a key?
That's right. Why didn't I? Here you'll see a little row of lettuce, and here's a row of carrots. It isn't acting quite normal, but who's normal, huh? Now, the sweet Spanish onions are doing very nicely, and that little potato, well, it just came up, and we'll let it stay there, why not? And what's that? Another potato that just jumped there. Let it alone. What the devil is this? That's a weed. Out with it. It's fantastic what you can do growing your own things. It really is. And my rhubarb is just, well, I say to everybody, if you want a rhubarb root, please tell me, because I've got to get rid of some of it. It spreads and grows. Now, I don't know how many people are interested in soybeans, but they are full of protein, as I guess we know. But almost nobody grows soybeans, because if you go and buy soybeans in a market, they don't taste very good. But if you grow your own soybeans, they are absolutely delicious. I've had 7,000 people from every state in Canada to come and look at the garden. I keep a book where they write their names, you see. I'll tell you right now, my husband has been dead for 15 years, and living alone like this, I don't know what on earth I would do if I didn't have this garden thing to write about, to help people with, to talk to garden clubs. I don't know how I could feel that I was doing anything that made it necessary for me to stay alive. I don't lecture a garden club. I talk maybe for 5 minutes, and then it's open to questions. It's not a talk, it's a conversation. I don't think I could have gone through it year after year, getting up, yep, 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 you know, trying to say the same old thing over and over. When they ask me what I charge, I say, whatever you give your most highly paid speaker. That sounds conceited, but it is because I found out that they give the highest amount to people who tell you how to put flowers in a vase, and I've got something more important to tell you than that.
That's an art in Japan.
What, dear?
Flower arranging is an art in Japan.
In Japan. Well, it would never, never occur to me to tell any other grown human being how to put some flowers in a vase. This is so good. I bet you're an awfully good cook, are you? This is so good. These are awfully good. This is delicious. Well, when I'm invited out to lunch.
Ace, the birds are singing. Yeah. Hello?
Yep.
Yep.
What happened?
We hear you. We hear you, Sean.
Where's Ace?
Oh, did Ace freeze?
I don't know.
He could
don't
just
hear
be
him.
sitting still. We can't tell with that guy.
Well, everything fucking went still. The birds, the show, and Ace.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There was an instant pause, silence in heaven for a half hour.
Oh, there he goes.
Oh, there he goes. So okay, so I'm not crazy.
Well,
Cool.
we're not saying that.
Yeah, right on.
Man, Ruth
Yeah.
Stout's my favorite. She's so great.
She's awesome. She's cool, dude.
Lovely woman.
Incredible. You hear her, Lawrence? You hear her talking about God without talking about God?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, he did.
That's all I hear.
If Christians could just stop telling everybody else what they need to believe
Yeah.
alone, God's got this.
Ace,
So
are you with
beautiful.
us?
No, I just got back.
Welcome back.
Okay. Welcome back.
What'd you guys say?
You froze, and so did the movie, and there was silence in heaven for a half hour. I was like waiting for the next foot to drop, but nobody was going to tell us what to do, so that was relief.
Yeah, she
Thanks.
sounds like a free gracer,
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
a universalist. And it's funny, she lives in New Hampshire, or she lived in New Hampshire or something like that.
Yeah.
No, Topeka, Kansas, that's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Somewhere where she was surrounded by the Puritan mindset.
Right.
And the Puritan mindset loves to tell people what to do.
yep.
Her relishing that drink.
Mhm.
Oh, it's delicious.
Relishing.
Just so beautiful. She interrupted the other person who was trying to say something, and she's like, "Oh, but this is so good."
Lovely.
Oh boy, makes my
Lawrence, are you
heart
having
sing.
fun with the show?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
great.
yeah.
I love her so much. She's the best.
Yep, I like her.
I backed it up a little bit in case we missed something.
Okay.
This garden thing to write about, to help people with, to talk to garden clubs. I don't know how I could feel that I was doing anything that made it necessary for me to stay alive. I don't lecture a garden club. I talk maybe for 5 minutes, and then it's open to questions. It's not a talk, it's a conversation. I don't think I could have gone through it year after year, getting up, yep, trying to say the same old thing over and over. And they ask me what I charge. I say, whatever you give your most highly paid speaker. That sounds conceited, but it is because I found out that they give the highest amount to people who tell you how to put flowers in a vase, and I've got something more important to tell you than that.
That's an art in Japan.
What, dear?
Flower arranging is an art in Japan.
In Japan. Well, it would never occur to me to tell any other grown human being how to put some flowers in a vase. This is so good. I bet you're an awfully good cook, are you? This is so good. These are awfully good. This is delicious. Well, when I'm invited out to lunch, I never eat a bite of breakfast. When I'm invited out to dinner, I never eat a bite of lunch. I like to be nice and hungry.
Would like more wine.
Not too much. Thank you. That's fine.
I think we're all going to get a little high on this wine.
I'm a little high already. Did I tell you that I was 45 years old when I found out that people actually behaved the way somebody else told them to, like Emily Post? When Fred told me that Emily Post had written a whole book about it, well, I couldn't wait to read. I got hold of that book right away, and here I read this book. Do this, do this, do this, do this, don't do this. And I couldn't believe it. Behaving properly, for heaven's sake. This woman down the road, a very rich woman, invited me to a formal dinner party. You know, RSVP and wear so-and-so. What do they call it? Black tie or something like that. I wrote her back. I liked her, but I said, I'm sorry I can't come to your party because if I did, I would embarrass you. I wouldn't know how to behave. I wouldn't know what to wear. I would do all the wrong things, and you would be upset, and I thought that would finish me with her. And the next day, somebody knocked on the door, and here was one of her servants with a great big bunch of beautiful flowers for me. So at least it didn't make her mad. She's nice. I've been there a few times since, but not to a formal party, for heaven's sake. Huh? I couldn't go to a formal party. I loved my husband very, very much. I really mean it when I say that I'm sure that he is the only man in the world who could have stood staying married to me, because I always was out of order. I mean, the things I did, I would go down there to garden, and the minute I got down there, I would take off all my clothes and garden naked. I've always loved the air on my body. And I never said a word to Fred about it one way or the other. It never occurred to me to mention it to him. And I came back every evening around 5 o'clock and put my clothes on before I came back. And one day I came back at 6. And Fred was out in the barn doing his stuff. He made all these wooden things and so on. And shortly after I got in, he came in and he said, "Oh, you worked longer today, didn't you?" I said, "But how did you know?" I was just curious how he happened to know. And he said, it was easy. As a rule, as the cars go along the road, after 5 o'clock, they just go on. But up until 5 o'clock, they kind of go very slowly and then look down where you're gardening. So I knew that you didn't come up until 6, because up until 6, they still stopped.
Right on.
I just am by nature an optimist. The pleasant idea comes instead of the depressing one. I couldn't admire anybody any more than I admired my grandfather. He always knew exactly the right thing to do and to say with everybody. I don't mean correct thing, of course. I mean the helpful thing. My oldest brother had a dog that he was crazy about, and the dog died. My 2 oldest brothers were out where I could see them from the window burying the dog. And the tears were rolling down my cheeks because I was sorry for my brother. And my grandfather came in the room and he saw what was going on. And he said, "Oh, come here, Ruth, I want to show you something." He took me over to the other side of the room and he said, "Here's the rose bush that you planted yourself. And look, it has a flower on it. You can go out and pick a flower off of your own rose bush." I started out and he put his arm around me and he said, "Thee was looking out of the wrong window, dear."
Oh, I get it.
Hey, Ace.
Do you guys get it?
Ace.
She was looking out the window at the dead dog being buried instead of out the window at the rose.
Yeah.
Did you hear those birds singing, Ace?
Yeah, I believe it did.
They were singing, "He's gonna always get what he wants."
Love it.
Yeah.
I always like to take my clothes off and feel the air on my skin.
Yeah. That's cute.
That was great.
Tinner, I think this was made in 1984, or maybe 85. Here, let me check and see if there's a date on on the thing. um, nope, it doesn't say. But from my knowledge of Roost Out, she died in the late 80s. So this had to be made in 84, 85.
What a woman.
What?
I said, what a woman.
Yeah.
She wouldn't make it in many churches, would she?
Oh, here's a copyright date on it. X, that's 75, 76. So it was made in 76.
Wow.
Nice.
That's 50 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
do you
death.
have birds like? Do you got birds like that hanging at your place, Matt?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did two things my first year. I buried all that wood where I knew I wanted the garden,
Mm-hmm.
and I started planting stuff for the birds.
Oh,
Berries, and we have we have blueberries and raspberries and grapes, but
Mhm.
also like letting things grow, like poison ivy.
yeah.
It's counterintuitive, but as long as poison ivy's not like directly around where you're going to be, it's not really a threat, but it produces these beautiful berries. It's a native plant in Michigan, and it produces these beautiful berries that occur pretty early in the season, so the birds love them, which is why they grow everywhere. Birds eat the berries and then poop them out and spread around the the poison ivy. But yeah, I really wanted a lot of birds because I didn't think that I would ever be able to bring like domestic animals or farm animals into my
Yeah.
property because it's so small and kind of in a city. So I wanted to attract the wild animals,
Mhm.
which is really important
Did
to
it
keep
work?
the whole place alive.
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked. I have birds all the time. You were talking about the doves that you get. I get the same. I get big, huge flocks of mourning doves this time of year, especially. But this time of year, when all of the migratory birds are returning, is when it really gets exciting. So
Mhm.
I've got probably 15 different species right now in the morning between the like sunrise and about 11 a.m. I could see 15 different species in my yard.
Wow.
Yeah. Got to make friends with the crows too. That's important. But you
Yeah.
got to be deliberate about that. You got to like feed them and talk to them and
Yeah. They're
You-
intelligent birds, dude.
yeah.
By the
Do
way.
they respond to you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How do they
yeah.
respond?
They greet me. They caw when I come out and they bring me
Yeah.
stuff. Well, I'm convinced they bring me stuff.
What is it
But-
they bring you?
Little things like shiny things. Balls of tinfoil is really common, or like pieces of metal and stuff. I'll find them outside of my back door, which is where I go out and I feed them. I feed them peanuts, I go out there and I feed them peanuts. I have a crow call. I haven't
Oh, how
used the crow
cool.
call, but for a long time. But when I first moved in, I started using the crow call every morning. And but now they know me. They supposedly they tell each other about the cool humans.
Yes.
Supposedly they do
Dude.
that.
They do. They share. Oh my God, dude. There was this story about it. They actually intelligently communicate with the other crows, bro. It's
awesome.
wild shit, bro. Way beyond our pay grade.
Yeah. I'm just glad they're on my side.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, get off my face.
Like the movie. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Whoa.
It's the birds.
It's funny with that though, because for a while I also had the attitude of, if I saw a rabbit, I was feeling good about it, or a groundhog or something. But some animals really are destructive, and some birds are too. I mean,
Yeah.
especially right after you plant your seeds, they can go. Starlings, for instance, can really decimate a newly planted garden.
Whoa.
But
Yeah.
yeah, because a big flock of them will just land and tear up the dirt and find every seed.
Yeah, I
But
was wondering that when I was hearing the birds in the background of these movies or these shows. I was thinking they're either rejoicing in the idea that she's planting new shit, or rejoicing in the idea that when she's gone, they're gonna eat all the shit.
yeah. Yeah. A lot of people just say, well, I plant extra for them,
Yeah.
It's true though. Those birds, a lot of birds love seeds. So
Yeah.
if you're just sprinkling seeds around on the ground, they'll get them.
Yeah.
Somehow it works though, Sean.
I know. Isn't that amazing how it all kind of works out?
Have you ever had the pleasure to harvest rhubarb like she was doing?
We have
In
that in Montana.
I've seen it growing before.
It's such a joy. There's such a like a tangible bounty when
We
you
used-
harvest rhubarb.
We used
It's
to pick
amazing.
I was a kid and try to peel some of the outside off and then dip it in a sugar bowl, coat it with sugar, and then bite into it. Oh man, that was good.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah,
Was kind of like a sour apple taste, kind of.
yeah.
Lauren?
You got
Yeah, it's a very tart plant. So
yeah.
I know they put them in. I've had them in pies before. Strawberry rhubarb pie.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We make rhubarb pies when we harvest.
Wow. It looks like Noel's chewing on a rhubarb.
Well, we're all going.
Something.
Okay, this
you got
one
here?
is this one is the Singing Frogs Farm people.
Oh, nice. I have their website open in my tabs right
Oh,
now.
you just found it?
When you were talking about it earlier, I was like, oh, can't forget about that. So I looked them up.
Okay, I'm going to put it on 125 because it's an hour long.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a boogie here in a little bit, Ace, but I'm gonna chill for a little while.
Okay.
Okay, just to let you guys know.
Danke vielmals,
Cool,
Maya.
Sean.
Und
Awesome
vielen
to see
Dank
you, man.
auf alle hier. Wir freuen uns sehr. Es gibt so viel Interesse in Market Gardening, in Ecological Farming und alles. So, okay, jetzt noch Musik in Englisch. Okay, so
Just making sure my microphone works good. Thank you all so much. This has just been amazing to be welcomed by all of you here, and it really is very meaningful to us. And we're thrilled to be able to learn from so many of you and to share what we've experienced over the past 13 years of farming. So.
absolutely. So we're going to talk mostly about our farm and about the principles of farming with our farm as an example. So a little bit about us, first of all. So this is most of the fields from Singing Frogs Farm. We are about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge and San Francisco. The property, and I have to check because it's all different numbers for me, the land is about 3.5 hectare, but the actual fields are about 1.1 hectare. Okay, so it's not so much land. We've been working on the land since 2007. We didn't start off with the no-till and the ecological. We started off with full tillage. We'll talk about that a little bit. About 45% of our products, our vegetables, go out through our CSA. We started out as a CSA farm, and that is really where our heart is. We love that. About another 45% go out.
Do you guys know what CSA means?
What is that? What is that? CSA?
Yeah, it means community supported agriculture.
Oh wow.
Which means they have some type of deal with families that the families buy into the crops at the beginning of the year. So before there's ever a harvest, they might pay $500 membership to be a part of the farm, community supported agriculture. And so the $500 gets them like 22 or 25 weeks worth of vegetables when harvest season shows up.
Wow.
So it's a deal for them at $500 a year, because if they would buy the same stuff at the grocery store, it'd be much more. But when they get the money up front, it gives the farmer courage to get out there and get to work, right?
Right.
And if there's a failure, then the community supported agriculture, they take the failure too.
Huh.
And so it's kind of like a junior version of the commodities market. Because in the commodities market, you know, instead of the stock market, you can go buy 50 tons of wheat in the commodities market. Let's talk about corn, because Kellogg's Corn Flakes, they have to buy wheat corn or in advance, right?
Right.
They lock in the price today, because if they waited until harvest time, cornflakes might be $2 a box this week and then $10 a box next week. But if they buy it up front before harvest season ever shows up, they lock in the price. And there are other people who buy commodities who never want delivery. Like you personally, Sean, might buy 50 tons of corn,
right?
Just to play the market, to play the commodities market. And so when the contract becomes due, you might sell the contract to Kellogg's. See, because you bet in the right kind of way, or if you bet in the wrong kind of way, you might lose money, because you don't want that 50 tons of corn delivered to your apartment building, right?
No.
So people play the commodities market, but Kellogg's Corn Flakes and all those other manufacturers, they're serious in the commodities market, and a CSA is a junior version of that. So these guys have 200, 500, maybe 1,000 customers or families, and 1 acre farm can support 200 families with this type of arrangement.
Wow.
If they do no-till gardening and follow this principle.
Do these corn company, like say like Kellogg's, right? And then you got all these you have maybe different corn companies. Do they compete in the market?
Yes, they compete to buy and lock in the price today so that they can have a delivery in 6 months.
Wow.
And so CSA is the families, they cough up $500 to get whatever the farm grows during the harvest season.
Wow.
And if the weather, if a storm ruins the crop, then the families take it in the chin as long as the farmer does.
Right.
But it spreads out the risk, and it also spreads out the rewards.
Right. Wow, that's cool.
So a CSA, that type of operation is very important for these local small-time farmers to have their own customers. And also with a CSA, you get a good feel for what they want. If they all hate strawberries, then you know not to grow strawberries.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of interaction. And some CSAs will invite their members to come and work on the farm on Saturday and help out.
Okay.
And so they feel connected to the farm even more.
Right.
Or you can get a different tier of membership if you spend a certain amount of hours at the farm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it's
if you
less
help
expensive.
them work out, you can get a discount.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I recommend it. If anybody, you got to think about it as like replacing your grocery budget. But if anybody is near, and most people these days do have some kind of CSA near them, I recommend looking into it and signing up for it, because you'll end up in the good years with way more than you would ever have just from your grocery budget, like way more bounty.
Yeah.
And on the lean years, you might have less variety, but the better operations are able to still deliver the calories one way or another, and you just got to get more creative with your cooking and things like that. That's the other thing about it, right, Ace, is that people get more involved in like understanding how to prepare and preserve.
Right. It's
the
amazing
harvest.
at how many people across the country right now, because of our civilization, they don't even know how to cook a chicken.
Yeah.
That's right.
They don't know how to
That's
cut
right.
up a chicken, much less harvest a chicken and pluck the feathers.
Right.
I got a plucking feather story for you. Way back, before Cuba went full communist, Fidel
Yeah.
Castro came to New York City to help raise money for his communist takeover
Yeah.
from the liberals in New York City. And he was kicked out of the hotel. It was an expensive hotel because he was plucking a chicken in his room.
Oh, how funny.
Trying to save a little cash.
Yeah.
To our
That
farmers
chicken-
markets. So that is
Go ahead.
Oh, just being goofy. I was going to say that chicken was just an egg when he came when he came to the city.
No plucking chickens in our hotel. That's so. What the hell? Can you imagine the bellboy and the cleaning lady looking around that room with all these feathers?
Wondering what smells so good.
Yeah.
is 90% that goes direct to the end consumer. About 8% goes out to 2 restaurants we have a very close relationship with, and then only 2% goes out through a food hub. It's a kind of wholesaler, but that still stays in the Bay Area, within the San Francisco greater area. So without that, 98% of our food stays within about 20 kilometers of our farm, and for us, that's really important. Let's see how much we are selling off of our farm. I had to translate these numbers. So we sell about $110,000 per acre, and translated, that's about 220 euro per hectare. So that's how many vegetables and fruits we are selling off of our property. We have about 5 to 8 employees, aside from Paul and myself, working on the farm. More like 8 or 9 in August and September, and more like 4 or 5 in January. And it's actually more than that, but there are many people who are part-time, who have other jobs, so we just break it down if everyone was full-time. Our climate, we have a Mediterranean climate, so we are very dry in the summertime, and then we start our rains in the winter. We actually had our first serious rain last week, but we have had our first frost for quite a while.
So the rain we had last week was the first rain since early April. So no rain for the rest of April, May, June, July, August, September, October, until mid-November was the next rainfall we had since early April.
Yeah, and we had about 5 centimeters.
Dang.
We were colder than you guys yesterday morning. We were -5 degrees yesterday morning. So we do get, I know you're thinking California, you're thinking the surfers and being out there in our bikinis. Not so much. And then in the summertime, we will usually hit about 38 degrees centigrade once for a few days in the summer, but it's a pretty moderate temperature.
One intriguing challenge we have, so you know, is we always have our first killing frost early in September. And then in late September and October, we always have a heat wave that comes through, and it gets up to around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so 37, 38?
37.
It'll do 38 in the daytime, and then down to like -1 at night, and 37 day, -2 at night, 38, -1. Yeah, that's our October for us.
Yeah. So, okay, let's continue on. Oh, we're both doing it. We call this 2 cooks in the kitchen. Okay, another view of our farm, just so you get an overview. It's shaped like a piece of pizza. The top of the crust of the pizza is this hillside that has oaks on it, and it comes down long here. We're coming to the very end. Our neighbor is 140 acre, how many hectare? 80 hectare?
So yeah, 80.
80 hectare.
Oh, no, 60 hectare vineyard.
Okay, vineyard on this side, and this is the majority of our fields coming down here. Someone asked earlier, why are we called Singing Frogs Farm? We have choruses of frogs. We have over 6 ponds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 up there. So we have quite a lot of these little Pacific chorus frogs that are very loud. Okay.
So I want to start in by talking a little bit about the story of soil. And of course, you all understand soil very well, but it's nice to always have a different view so we can have more language and more ideas about how to share what we know with the greater world. Because as a farmer doing this unique kind of farming, a large part of our job is education, as many of you found out. We have to talk and share and educate our consumers and our politicians about how we are farming. So soil is air, water, and mineral, and the organic matter. And this is that critical component that we are all concerned with. The organic matter, where the carbon is, and all the organisms, etc. If you didn't have organic matter, what you have is a beach or a sand dune, right? Just water, air, and mineral. There's no life. In fact, That's what Mars has. So if you think about all the planets in our solar system, they all have chemistry, but only one has biology. And yet, since World War II, our focus on agriculture has been about the chemistry. We have spent all of this time, the past 80 years, thinking about the chemistry of plants and the chemistry of soil, and not the biology. And yet, every planet out there has chemistry. It's only us that has the biology. So we really have to change how we approach life, how we approach food production and agriculture and soil, and begin to bring that biological component in, that life component. As many of you already know, tillage is one of the major practices that reduces the organic matter level in the soil. And that's a quote from the FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. So it's very well documented science. When they mention this, what they're talking to and referring to is the many different components of how tillage destroys soil. One of those is the chemical way it destroys it, which is the very act of tilling up the soil, is breaking all the aggregates into smaller and smaller pieces. And so as the soil pieces get smaller, there's more surface area to volume ratio, and that act of tilling mixes in oxygen, and the higher surface area to volume ratio allows more carbon and nitrogen to be released from the soil, combining with the oxygen to form carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. So the very act of tillage takes the carbon and nitrogen that you need as a farmer, removes it from the soil, and puts it in the atmosphere as greenhouse gases. A huge double negative. In addition, tillage also destroys the biology of the soil, not just the chemistry. A great quote from our own USDA, United States Department of Ag: tilling the soil is equivalent of an earthquake, hurricane, tornado, and forest fire occurring simultaneously to the world of soil organisms. Simply stated, tillage is bad for the soil. That's pretty blunt. That's a very direct and very powerful statement.
Probably worth pointing out that he doesn't have to quote government agencies here. He's making a point by using them as the source.
What he's quoting there is an old USDA quote. Back when they might have earned their cape.
It looks like it says 2010.
I can't imagine that the modern USDA would let that leak out.
That's probably true. Still, I think he's saying, like, this is just true, you guys. Like, I'm not trying to spin a yarn here. Like, this isn't speculation. Like, even the guys that would rather not admit it say this is true,
Mm-hmm.
It's bad for the soil. Tillage is bad for the soil. That's right. Everybody does it.
In nature, there's the soil does get disturbed once in a while, but it's not very deep tillage. Like a pig or a groundhog would root around a little bit in the soil, but they don't till thousands of acres all at once.
Right.
So these guys are famous for saying the 5 properties of good soil management are: disturb the soil as little as possible.
Right.
Always keep the soil covered with something. Keep crops in it all the time. Have a variety of crops, and it must have animal input, like poop.
Right. Incorporate animals.
Yeah.
Right.
From our own agricultural department.
What's that?
Just said heck yeah.
Heck yeah. Oh, and by the way, the speakers, in case you can't read it, it's Elizabeth and Paul Kaiser.
Still promotes tillage in all kinds of ways. That's the problem. So what's happening, right? The tillage is coming in and it's breaking up soil, breaking up habitat. There are billions and billions and billions of organisms in a little teaspoon of soil. We still don't know most of those organisms. We haven't named them, we haven't identified them, we don't know what they do, but there's so much life in there. And the act of tilling it up just blows it up and destroys the life in the soil. Another way that tillage affects soil is just through the sheer erosion effect. And erosion is often something you can't see. You might see a gully form, but what about just a little bit of erosion every single year for hundreds of years? So this is a great study done, again, by the USDA, and they were looking down in the Appalachian, Tennessee area. They had about 8 farms. They had 4 farms doing no-till, a mechanized no-till. This is large production monoculture. And they had 4 farms doing moldboard plow over 4 years. And what they found was in the erosion here, take a look at moldboard plow, they had 4,700 pounds of soil loss per acre per year. So we had like 2,000 plus kilos, 2,200 kilos of soil per half hectare. So we have to, I'll leave it in the acres. And
in John Jevons' book called How to Grow More Vegetables with Less Land Than You Can Imagine. Now, he tells the story of this one farmer who took over a farm, and then after 40 years, the dirt came up to his front door, right? He only had to step up one step to get into the front door. But after 40 years, he had to build a staircase
Right.
up to his door. And then he couldn't get any crops to grow worth crap. And he said, this land is crap. I'm getting out of here. So he sold the farm. But he didn't realize what he was doing, He didn't even see the very obvious that he was eroding the soil with his tillage practice. And so he had to build a 8-step staircase to get inside of his door.
It's amazing.
Isn't that
And
what Dust Bowl
yeah,
way back when?
Yeah, the Dust Bowl was actually a result of tillage.
Oh,
Yep.
too much over tillage, yeah.
Yeah.
And it took a decade to self-correct.
that's right.
Are we talking about the stuff or right around the Great Depression time
Yeah.
afterwards?
Yeah.
Right before
Yeah.
that,
Wow.
it precipitated the Depression.
Oh.
I think it was Joel Salatin, the famous farmer Joel Salatin, who has a theory as to why all that tillage started happening in the 40s and 50s.
Hmm.
Because when the soldiers came back from the war, they were used to driving tanks and big heavy equipment, so they just got addicted to those things. So
Oh, geez. That's probably true. Jesus.
the psychology of feeling the power of this tank and this combine and this big tractor.
Okay, the really important part is look at the no-till. Same crop, same soil, same valley, different management practices. 6 pounds of soil loss per acre per year. This is 700 times more soil loss. That means you could farm this field for 700 years using no-till and have the same amount of erosion after 700 years of farming no-till as 1 year of farming this with moldboard plow. And in case you think I'm using numbers that help prove my point, I want you to know that this number was half our national average during the study dates. In the late 70s, early 80s, our national average in the United States was 9,400 pounds of soil loss per acre per year. This moldboard plow field was good fields. These 4 farms, they were good farms by the national average. And they're still 700 times more soil loss. Just to give you an idea, that much soil loss, it's about 1/13 of an inch. You can barely see it on an acre. So after a few years, you might get that little 1/4 centimeter. After a decade, you might get that centimeter, but you wouldn't really see it going away. It's such a slow thing, but it's a huge amount of soil loss.
I got it. I'm actually just going to even add there, our farm is a very interesting example because our whole farm, I remember I talked about that pizza slice. As you go down to the bottom tip of the pizza, you're going downhill. And we have some ponds at the bottom there. They're seasonal ponds, so they dry out during our dry summer, and you can see the erosion. The prior farmer there, he told us when we moved onto the property, he said, this is a great system because every autumn you can come in here when the pond is dry, take your tractor, scoop all of the silt from last year, put it back on your fields, till it in, put in your winter cover crop. Isn't that great? Well, Paul did that for the first couple of years until we started changing our system. At this point, there's nothing going down in those fields. So we have a beautiful example on our farm of that working.
So if we look at how much of the total soil organic matter and soil carbon has been lost from our agricultural soils, it's roughly 2/3 of all the soil organic matter and soil carbon has been lost from our agricultural soils in just the past 70 or 80 years since the mechanization with the tractor and massive efficiencies where we're farming the same fields year after year. So really what we're saying is we do not have another 100 years of soil carbon left to keep farming the same way. Something has to give. Something has to change. So in the US, which is actually a pretty good reflection of global numbers, but before humans were involved, arable land, healthy arable land that Mother Nature had been tending for 1,000 years, had between 6 and 10% organic matter. As soon as humans move in and humans begin plowing and disking and farming, that topsoil drops rapidly. And today in the US, we have between 0 and 3% organic matter. And in California, we have a whopping 1% organic matter as our state average. It's down to that. It's been going down every year.
I don't know if you've said, but 57% of soil organic matter is carbon. So you can actually just have these numbers and say, 3 to 5% soil carbon and 0 to 1.5% there.
And just remember, SOM, so soil organic matter. We'll keep using that acronym.
Got it.
So,
Okay. Talking about our farm now. So as we have progressed, we really focus on the soil. We focus on not doing any tillage of any sort. If you've seen any of our presentations, we love going through these principles. And when we have farmers, gardeners, policymakers on our farm, or we're talking to, we like coming back to these because they're really simple. In fact, we did a great presentation 2 years ago at a local conference with a rancher named Gabe Brown, who's very well known in regenerative ranching. He has 3,000 acres, so about 1,500 hectare of cattle in North Dakota, which is pretty rural and north in the United States. And we did a presentation doing number 1 on 3 acres of vegetable in Northern California and on 3,000 acres with cattle in North Dakota. And it was really great to see we were using the same principle but different management. So I think everybody can use these no matter if they have one very small garden bed or 3,000 acres. So first one, disturb the soil as little as possible. Paul just talked about why we don't want to disturb the soil. And I'm going to let you talk about it.
and it's actually been interesting because there's been a lot of studies how to bring back soil organic matter through agriculture, right? Because agriculture has been one of the great reasons we've lost soil organic matter. How do we bring it back? So in University of California, Davis, they had at least one study, there's been many, and also the Rodale Institute had another set of studies. They're using conventional or low input ag or organic agriculture. Here was conventional or organic animal-based and organic legume-based. And what they're looking at is the percentage, the starting and ending of the trial and the organic matter levels in the soil after 10 years. And here you have typical ag soils are between that 1 and 3%, that yellow range. However, the average of US agricultural soils in 1920 was 6 to 8%, and you're way up there above the green, actually. So it's interesting to see that conventional, you pretty much, if you have, Rodale Institute's really good at farming, so they made their conventional actually get a little bit better after 23 years. That's good. But when you get into the organic, you see greater increases, right? You have greater increases from the organic because the organic is trying to have that cover crop that helps feed the soil in winter so you reduce the damage from tillage. But none of these systems, even after 23 years, have gotten remotely close to where it used to be before humans intervened. Well, Singing Frogs Farm, even after just 5 years, we can bring our organic matter back to where Mother Nature used to have it. Not a hard thing to do. So I think the point of that is we have to think outside the box. Don't think little small increments. Think about getting back to what Mother Nature intended. And here's a great example.
So, when we first started farming, we weren't honestly the best farmers. So this is an example of one of our beds that we had very early on, our first year or two. When we started out, our soil organic matter was 2.4%, so our soil carbon 1.4%. And very quickly, as soon as we started changing, we saw we were increasing our soil organic matter by about a percentage point a year. Not 15 years, not 20 years, but about a year. And other farmers who have taken on from us and followed our methodology are very much finding the same, such that depending upon our field, I would actually say we're between about 8 and 13% at about a 15 centimeter depth. Oh,
Just thought I'd tell you that I grew up on a farm in Virginia. And as I was growing up, I always thought farmers were stupid. And the guys who wore neckties were smart. But just listening to these two, and these guys sound like mad scientists. They're not stupid at all. They're really studying the matter, and it's paying off for them.
There we go, 15 to 30 centimeter depth. So that's a soil carbon of 4.6 to 6.5%. And that's where we're farming now. And I can tell you that this is a different story to be farming here. Your plants are happier, they're more resistant, their immune systems are robust and strong. So even if you have one of those large temperature swing days, they can make it through. They're dealing with pests better and so forth.
So this is, again, 2 different soil samples taken this past summer in August. And all we did was go to our fence and go 50 meters on one side of the fence to the vineyard and 50 meters on our side of the fence to field 3. Those 2 soils are 100 meters apart. This is what our soil used to look like in the beginning. And that's what it looks like now after a decade of doing no-till farming. Again, that depth, 15 to 30 centimeters. And this is a wonderful example of having just harvested a chicory. This is the stem, so it's really only like 1 inch. You're looking straight down on the soil, and you can see all the earthworms and life around that one chicory stem. Well, that bed had 240 chicory plants in it. And 240 of those were harvested for that weekend's farmers markets in CSA. And the amount of life that we could visually see in the soil was astounding. And then you start to think about, what if I had a BCS walk behind tractor and I just drive through it, till it all under? It's devastating to till things under. So this is one of those examples where you suddenly see how much life there is, and that's only the life that you can see with your eyes. That isn't all the life that you can't see, the microscopic life as well.
So I think we did the first one pretty well. The second principle, don't want to kill that life. Keep living plants in the soil as often as possible, right? And the 4 basic steps why we want to. So this is the other side of that equation of if you're tilling and you're taking that carbon out and you're killing that life. Well, here's the other side. So your plant is photosynthesizing. You know, it's got its chlorophyll. It's taking the CO2 in through the holes, through the pores. It's taking the C off the carbon. It's releasing the oxygen again. That carbon becomes glucose, one of your most basic building blocks of life. Then it is resynthesizing that glucose into a myriad of different carbon-based products, more complicated sugars and carbohydrates and amino acids and proteins and so forth and so on, waxes and fats. And then we've got exudation here. That is pushing many of those products of photosynthesis with that carbon down through the roots into the soil, depending on the plant, depending on the season, depending on how healthy it is, its stresses and so forth. Anywhere from 20 to 70% of that carbon that the plant is capturing, it's pushing out into the soil. And that's what we want. That is the humification, feeding the soil. That is why we want to have as many green photosynthesizing plants in the ground as often as possible. Now, this is fun. This is it in a petri dish. This is a little root hair coming down here, and it is pushing out liquid sun, root exudate, into that petri dish.
Look at that.
So that's just food for all of the biology in the soil. And that biology in the soil takes it in, reconstitutes it, recombines it, and sends it back to the plant in the form of its own manures from the biology in the soil. And they have that relationship, that symbiotic relationship. But that is what initiates the whole process. That's taking that sunlight and feeding our planet Earth.
So this is from USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, but it's just a good basic soil food web. What's happening here with these plants? They're exudating, they're feeding the bacteria and the fungi, which are feeding all the next level of organisms, your nematodes, your protozoas, your fungi, so forth and so on, and just going up the food chain to your larger animals. So pretty basic, but just to say that. This is, you saw some of the samples that Paul showed you from our neighbor. This is on our neighbor's property. Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm over in the vineyard. First of all, walking there was just dust clouds coming up because there's no cover. And this is actually, so if you think about this vineyard, they do a cover crop in winter, and they have a perennial crop, the vineyard, the grapes. So really, it's only tilled in the spring and tilled once in the fall, and then they sow a cover crop. So it's pretty minimal impact, but getting that soil block out was challenging. That soil block was a lot like a hunk of concrete. It was very challenging. Go over to our field 3.
This is late July.
Sink this shovel in, and what we pull out is like chocolate cake. The difference is this almost falls apart in my hand. Our chocolate cake soil is so light and so fluffy, I'm really delicately carrying it from the field to the water. Well, here's our soil in the water, and here's the vineyard soil on the left. The vineyard soil, it begins to fall apart immediately. This was the one that was like a concrete rock that I couldn't get out of the ground. But when you put it in water, it has no ability to hold together because there's no biology in that soil that's excreting glomulins and other supermolecules which would hold the soil together. This is a test that you can do at home that really demonstrates tons of biological activity that's excreting glomulins and supermolecules to hold that soil together versus absolutely no biology, and the soil is completely falling apart as it sits in water. And this is critical. I have to say, our soil block, I was very delicate when I handled it because it could fall apart in my hands, but in water, nothing happens. It sat there for another 4 days and still didn't lose anything. 4 days later, it looked just like this.
It's just the water got a little brown. It made tea, nice tea.
No, this one.
No, but just there were no particles.
Right, and this one was gone in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, it was sand on the bottom. Well, one of the drought years that we had back in 2010, the last rainfall of 2010 was February 4th. There was no rain for all of February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, until October 22nd was the very first rainfall since February 4th. That October 22nd rainfall was 13 inches, so we're at 4, 8, 12, so 31 centimeters in 36 hours. And that was the first rainfall since February 4th to October 22nd. Which soil do you want to have? Simple as that.
Exactly. Okay, so continuing back with wanting to have photosynthetic capture all the time, we have an artificial system, but we're having 3 to 8 sequential economic crops in any one bed in a 12-month cycle, and that's how we'll do that. And often you'll actually have multiple crops in one bed.
They're all cover crops, and they're all economic. So just keep that in mind.
This just sort of continues on, growing as many different species of plants as practical. We don't want to grow an acre of broccoli and then an acre of broccoli and then an acre of broccoli. We want to rotate through as many as possible. We grow about 70 different crops per year.
But this really goes back to having that diversity in your plant species. The North American prairie grass system has over 500 species of plants spread throughout. It's amazing the diversity within these fields. 85% of the vegetative biomass is below ground, out of sight. The root mass of a natural native prairie is so much greater than the above ground biomass. And 60% of the total net primary productivity occurs below ground. Yes, all of this is capturing sunlight, but there's far more happening below ground where the exudation occurs to feed the biology, to bring more nutrients into the entire system of the prairie. So I think these kinds of numbers are so critical for us to all recognize how much is happening beneath our feet. The vast majority of life happens beneath our feet. And the only way we feed that is through maximizing the sunlight capture, maximizing photosynthetic capture so that we can have as much root exudation into the ground as possible.
Boom.
So crop diversity also allows for climate resilience. I can say that we've had...
Go ahead, Mac.
The vast majority of life occurs beneath our feet.
Yeah.
We have to capture the light to feed the life beneath our feet.
Right.
Now, what I said was boom gospel because because that's what that sounds like to me.
Because the true spiritual life is inward and people can't see it.
That's right. That's right.
Crop failures every single year. But if we have 70 to 100 different species that we're growing, and each species might grow between 2 and 15 crops of it each year, then we can have crop failures, and it doesn't really change our bottom line, our economic returns. We've had something fail every single year, or 2 or 3 or 5 things fail every year, and yet our revenue has continued on the exact same trajectory. So there's no big losses and boom years and losses. We're very stable economically because of the diversity.
And with those 2 to 5 complete losses, we also have a few crops that are just tremendous, and we get so much more from than we were anticipating. So it goes both ways.
So this is an example that was mentioned earlier this morning in a few presentations about multi-cropping or intercropping. We love to do this with many different species of vegetables. This is an example of the big Romanesco cauliflower, the cauliflower that makes a spiral pattern. It's beautiful, but the plants are huge, very large plants. So when you transplant out the transplants of this Romanesco cauliflower, we do it 24-inch spacing. So again, we got 24-inch spacing, 2 lines. I want to keep going. And once you transplant them out, you can look down and the 90% of the bed is bare soil. You think, well, that's going to be a month until those cauliflower plants grow up and fill in. That's a month that I have all this bare soil between the plants. Why not put some lettuces in and take advantage of that? So in this picture, I have 100% crop cover of cauliflower and 70% cover of lettuces. So 1.7 crops in the given area during the time. What's happening? The lettuces are helping maximize sunlight capture and maximize root exudation. The lettuces are also covering and protecting the soil, which reduces weeds and increases soil moisture, which for us in the dry Mediterranean climate is a great thing. So we can increase soil moisture content and decrease watering by having more crops there, which seems so contrary to what people think. Oh, if you have more plants, you need more water. But it's not always the case. If you do it right, these plants are shading the soil, maintaining higher moisture levels in the soil by protecting it and covering it. As they grow together, the cauliflower begins to close canopy, shading and giving a light windbreak and shade to lettuces right at the peak of the lettuce harvest. So the lettuce becomes very tender and flavorful from having a little bit of a sun and windbreak by the cauliflower. The lettuces harvest out. The cauliflower now closes canopy and grows up, and you have to harvest a cauliflower as well. So it's a great way to increase overall yields. This is actually about 3 weeks after transplant. And then 2 weeks later, we harvest, and this was the morning we had just harvested out the lettuces, and now the cauliflower has closed canopy, and a month later, we get the cauliflower harvest as well. So this is what I just went over, some of these ideas. A quick crop for us are things like lettuces that grow in 1 or 2 months, versus a long duration crop would be that cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, etc., tomatoes.
And I often get asked, how is it, well, let me show a couple more examples. How is it that we choose which plants to put together? And really, more than anything else, we're actually looking at architecture. So with those brassicas that we have back here, we have the larger brassicas that are arching up and out, and then we have a wide head lettuce underneath so that they fit together nicely. Versus here, we've got leeks, and this is just having been transplanted. You've got our rows of leeks right here with the lettuces in between. And here, we're ready to harvest out these lettuces. And so here, we're creating hallways of leeks. So we're getting nice, tall, little mini romaines that will fit nicely in that same structure. And we will harvest out these mini romaine lettuces put down another layer of compost, hill up the leeks a little bit, and transplant a second crop of mini romaines in there. So we'll get 2 crops of mini romaines amongst one of, okay, he
or
says.
3 when we're good.
Oh.
But if you can grow a whole leek crop, a 100% leek crop, and simultaneously get 3 crops of mini romaine lettuce out of it, well, those mini romaine lettuces were worth more than the leeks anyway. So you've just doubled or tripled your revenue in that leek bed.
Tomatoes will always have crops on them. And again, when you're planting those tomatoes, they're very small and they need to be every, half meter or so. And so we will put both sides of the beds fully in a quick crop. Here we've got some endives. Here we've got some red butter lettuces. And we will often try to get 2 different successions in there. Then when we harvest that out, we'll actually put mulch on them and turn off the water. So then we will have dry farm tomatoes, which intensifies the flavor and makes them much nicer. Now, we don't actually have a picture of this. At the end of the tomato crop, right when we're trying to get in all of our winter crops to get them to grow up so that we can harvest them for Christmas, we will come back in and on the sides plant brassicas, like cauliflowers, while we are harvesting the last of the tomatoes until the frost kills them, and we'll take out the tomatoes.
And the broccoli will already be larger and covering the soil and established. So we can take more advantage of more sunlight before it goes into the dark of winter. So we can get our brassicas well established just as the tomatoes are ending, always overlapping crops as we go. These tomatoes are usually put in the ground in the first 2 weeks of March, and then we begin harvesting our tomatoes by the end of May, despite the fact that you saw we usually have our last killing frost in early June. So we can often harvest field tomatoes before we have our last frost. It's a challenge, it's a real challenge, but
Yeah.
all the frost blankets and covering.
Super. Another one we just started last year, we grow a lot of brassicas. Brassicas are challenging because they do take a lot from the soil, and there's some debate how much they actually feed the mycorrhizal communities in the soil. And so we wanted to make sure to have bridge crops that were feeding the mycorrhizal fungi at the same time, or just at least a very different crop. So we have tried, and we love doing this, when we transplant out a more narrowly spaced brassica, not the big cauliflowers, but maybe broccolis or cabbages, we will seed fava beans. Now, we're not using that just as a cover crop. We will actually harvest them, and you can see Anna and Sarah here with harvested bunches of the leaves. You educate people. We've got a couple of restaurants. They love this as a very light spring green. We give it out to our CSA members, and we've got a second crop in there that's doing something very different. This is one, it's only a few weeks old, and you can see all the nodules fixing nitrogen along there. We've got this at the same time that we've got the 100% crop cover of that broccoli or that cabbage or something else.
And that is only a few weeks old and already nodulating.
Something that we added this year was flowers, something we hadn't been very interested in doing the last several years. We wanted to feed people. But we had these 2 farmers who've both worked with us for a long time, and they really pushed and came with a business plan to us. We want to do some flowers and do a CSA and so forth. So we said, great, we'll incubate that. You can try it. It turned out to be really good. And we're actually very excited for several reasons. First of all, we have this movement. We're calling it the slow flower movement, not bringing in flowers from South America that are sprayed with God knows what, but having them local, having them no-till. And we're really excited because the insects it brings in, the pollinators that it brings in, and it is a very different root structure than most of our vegetables. So these beds that had the flowers this year will not have flowers next year. They'll be in another place, and we will rotate through a very, very different crop. So we're excited about this for many different reasons. And it's pretty too.
So back to the plant species diversity, it's also more than the crops. We get into the hedgerows and perennials and bed ends and fruit trees and ground covers. And we'll actually cover this a bit after our break. We're going to talk for about an hour and a half now, take a very short 5 or 10 minute break, and then come back for the last 50 minutes or so. And we'll talk more about hedgerows and ecology then. But you can see, this is our roadway, and this is now early summer, and it hasn't rained in a few months. And our bed ends are also flowers or oregano, various flowers again. So we like to create a lot more diversity, as well as a nice tree here on the very corner. A lot more diversity in our fields than just the vegetables. So here's another hedgerow. This diversity.
Well, we want perennials in there as well as annuals. 95% of our crops that we're harvesting and making money off of are annuals, and we want perennials in there too, in that diversity of crops. But of course, in that same, square meter, you can't have a perennial and then an annual and then a perennial. It doesn't work. So we like to get it in the same area. Now, for the ecology, it is so immensely important because this is our habitat for our beneficial insects as well as some of the beneficial animals on our property. Let's talk about that for a minute. So the beneficial insects are our predators. Versus the ones who want to eat our crops, those are the prey. Now, we don't understand insects quite as well as we understand mammals, so let me give you an analogy. Think about a bunny rabbit as a pest in your garden, and think about maybe a fox that might eat that. Now, the bunny rabbit has a shorter lifespan, it's smaller, it reproduces very quickly, right? and you don't want it there. So on our farm, we could have many families of bunny rabbits living. They don't need very much space to live in. Now let's look at the fox. The fox has fewer babies, fewer kits, less frequently. It's physically a larger animal, and it needs more wild space. So we'd actually need a few of our farms to have a family of foxes. The same is true of the insects. The pest insects, they are going to live on our annual plants and feed there. They have a very short lifespan, and they reproduce very rapidly. An aphid, for crying out loud, is born pregnant. It will only live for about a month. It's going to live right on your crop, and it's going to feed right there. Now, the lady beetle who is going to eat that may live for a couple of years, has far fewer progeny, and it needs to have a more stable habitat that it will then travel out to eat and then go back to a safe home afterwards. So your perennial bushes between a half meter and 2 meters in height is the prime habitat for those beneficial insects. And our studies have shown that they will go out from those, 250 feet, but
15, 80, and 100 meters, but mostly they'll go out only to where they find food. So if you only have hedgerow every 200 meters, well, they may not find the pest insects in the middle of the field. They may only go out 5 meters and find pests there. So we'll show you later in the second half how frequently we have hedgerows throughout the farm, but really the goal is this is how you support beneficial insects, which are your predators for pest control.
And many other good things.
So this is actually a great slide because to the left, about 10 meters, is the 60-hectare conventional vineyard. To the right, 15 meters or 20 meters is one of our fields. And we planted all of this in here. So it's creating this buffer between the conventional vineyard and us. And here's an example of all the hedgerows on our farm. We're going to look at the whole farm as a large organism. And this is starting up at the top of the property at the crust of the pie and working our way down to the tip.
along the top up here, we have all sorts of oaks. Over here is our house, so we have all sorts of plantings around our house, and we have some of our animals, so a lot of trees. Here's our very first hedgerow. We put that in on the day that we moved onto the property, so it's 14 years old.
So you can see all the bed ends along
Bed
here.
ends along here. Then we have more hedgerows at the bottom of this field.
Hedgerow here,
Yep.
hedgerow here.
Here are some new ones.
sides.
This is the big one we were just looking at.
across.
Another one across over there. Got some.
Hedgerows along the side between us and the vineyard.
Yep.
Got a hedgerow cutting through fields 8 and 10 right there.
More
and
native
all
plantings back
wildlands
here.
we planted. There were hedgerows. Yep. So, there we go. And it still keeps going.
And then this one is our largest one in terms of height. We call it our green wall because it's also a spray barrier and a windbreak with our neighbor over there. So just to give you an example of how many of those we have on the property.
So that was a big one. Grows many different species of plants is practical. Keeping the soil covered all the time, right? Maximizing photosynthetic capture, maximizing sunlight so you can maximize root exudation. The best way to do that is with green living plants. You want to get tons of plants in there all the time and never have that bare soil exposed. And there's some nice bed ends along with our big tomato alleys and broccoli and flowered broccoli over here. But really, you want to maximize that green photosynthetic capture of the plant material. We do that by using very large transplants. We don't like to do seeding out in the fields very often, direct seeding. Transplants are a much better way to get more rapid growth so you can have sunlight capture and root exudation and protect and cover the soil. So some of the reasons that we do the transplants instead of direct seeding, you can see right here. I think one great one is always 100% crop cover. If the seed doesn't germinate in the nursery, well, you don't transplant it out in the field. So that every bed in the field always has 100% crop cover because you only fill it with transplants. Also, if your plants are spending the first month of their life in the nursery before they go in the field, that means less time in the field. Less time in the field means more crops per year and less availability to pests because they're out in the field less time. So one of our pest control measures is simply transplanting large, healthy plants so they're less time in the fields and therefore pests don't find them. Also, you're outcompeting weed seeds. So one of the main, and that's some of the big problems farmers often face, are pest management and weeds. And we tend not to have to worry much about pests or weeds on the farm. It's quite lovely to not have to worry about that and worry more about where do we sell all the food we're growing.
So our nursery is super, super important to us, having good, healthy transplants that we can go out to the field.
So these are just some lettuces that are about actually they're ready to go out in the field, or they could wait a week. You can see we actually use pretty large cell sizes. This allows for a flexibility in transplanting. We can get up to sort of a 2-week window of when the plant can transplant out, which is critical because maybe the right beds in the right field aren't ready yet. So you want to wait a little bit of time. And these plants, those could have been transplanted a week and a half ago. They're going out that day. They could also wait 1 more week before they went out. Larger cell sizes means stronger, healthier transplants and more flexibility in managing your nursery transition to your field. Here's transplants going out. You can see lettuces all laid out on the sides, some baby bok choy.
So you've got really good soil cover on this instantaneously. You are cutting out a photosynthesizing plant and going straight into the next one in there, covering that soil.
And if you have to direct seed, like carrots, beans, peas, spinach, a few other things, then we like to use an agricultural burlap to cover those beds. So these have just been direct seeded with either a carrot or spinach. And that burlap isn't really tight like a coffee sack. It's a little looser. And it allows for the soil to be kept at a warmer temperature and higher humidity, so you can water it less. And it really increased germination rates. Got much higher germination rates and much more rapid germination timing with the burlap on there as a cover. And then, of course, if you can't do all that, you can always mulch your beds as well and keep that soil covered and protected. But covering and protecting the soil is really critical. The biology in the soil doesn't want exposure to full sun and full wind, just like you don't. So really keeping that soil covered. Here we're straw mulching some of our broccoli for summer, because summer gets quite hot, and the roots of the broccoli don't want a lot of heat like that. So we can really keep their feet cooler with straw mulch.
And then we're just feeding the biology with all that straw that we're putting out into the field. If we cannot cover the ground either through green photosynthesizing plants, that's optimal, or an organic mulch, the third option is a plastic mulch. So we don't love this option, but we will use it a couple of different ways. Mostly we'll use it in the winter when we're in the Persephone period, when you have fewer than 10 hours of daylight per day. You get out a large crop for Christmas. You don't want to put something right back in, cover it, and then the beginning of February, we'll plant it out. And you could see Sam there was just pulling it up. And so you can see the residue. There was some brassica here with large stems before. Those will all stay there. And we will prep the beds and put the next crop in right now. So this is a video from March. Come on, go. Just showing you lots of different ways. We've got strawberries here that do have plastic on them, and then they have mulch in the pathways. Here we've got some covering of beds. We've also got just one there. Sometimes we'll cover just the pathways if we're dealing with some beds there. We've also got straw mulch along the edges of the field. We've got lots of green ground cover here. All the beds are planted. So those are ways that we will keep the soil covered all the time. Yay.
Incorporating animals. This was always one that we struggled with. And in the beginning, we used to incorporate animals much more easily when we were tillage-based. We would just do a winter cover crop and then move the chickens into the cover crop field for winter, and it worked beautifully. But as we moved into a no-till system, it was more challenging to incorporate animals because you have to be concerned with food safety issues with manures. And finally, we had a woman, an entomologist, out visiting our farm for a farm tour, and we had a 20-person farm tour, and we started at the beginning, gave the introduction, then we began the farm tour down the fields. And we realized this woman is actually still back at the beginning on her belly in the grass, in the roadway, just staring at the ground. Well, we kind of offer for her to come join us, and she just, no, I'm fine. We go on an hour-and-a-half farm tour, come back, and she's still in the same spot, laying on the ground. She's like, you wouldn't believe the amazing beetles I saw in your grass, and spiders. You have so much life in your grass. All these guys are adding to your animal life in your farm, and they're going out in your fields and eating all sorts of pest insects or moving soil around. The point is that we can get a lot of other ways of managing animals on the farm without those animals being cows or sheep or goats. Include your songbirds, your snakes, your voles, all your insect life, your beetles, your spiders, etc.
We're showing pictures of hedgerows here because those really are bringing in that biology. Some of these hedgerows here. We have a lot of snakes, and we love our snakes. First couple of years with tillage, you would cut through these guys, and you didn't have very many. With a no-till system and the hedgerows, they love it under there. What do these guys control? Voles, field mice, even baby gophers. It's fantastic. So lots of life. We have turtles. Those are native bees, birds, as much life as we can. This is Miguel. He was from Mexico, from an area, and they hated snakes. He came to the property, and Paul would be like, great, look, there's a snake. And he would be all the way over there. Miguel got to have the job of trapping. We still do trap some of our voles and our gophers and things like that. And once he recognized how these guys were his friends, he started calling them his compañeros. And so one day I was talking to him, and I'm like, well, we're going to put beets down there. I know there's been a lot of voles. Could you maybe get ahead of it and start trapping some voles down there? And he said, Elizabeth, no, mis compañeros have been helping me down there. And I'm like, my Spanish is pretty good, but what am I missing here? And finally I got to understand he was seeing snakes, realizing that was an area that had a lot of rodents, picking them up and taking them to where there was more food. So we love our snakes, we love our hawks, we love our birds, all of that. And then another way that we are incorporating animals on the farm is through their manures. So we get several different kinds of manure, from off the farm that we bring in and add to our composts. Yeah, so you can see here there's a lot of our there's some old eggplants and brassicas, but there's also some old compost, and then we will mix it with manure as we're making our compost. So those are our principles. Not our principles. Those are the principles that we like to talk about. Yeah. Yeah. Keep going? Okay. Super.
Yeah, that's the first half. So many versions of this quote have been said this morning already, and this is just my favorite version of how to say this, that life improves the capacity of the environment to sustain life. The more life you have, the more resilient it becomes, and the more able it is to have yet more life. So desert environments are very fragile for a reason. But if you can create an absolute abundance of life on your farm with your hedgerows, with being no-till and taking care of your soil biology, you can create this vast amount of life on your farm that just allows more life to thrive. It's just a self-reinforcing, virtuous cycle. This is the meat and potatoes now of how we apply the principles to farming. So those 5 principles really come down to transitioning a bed from one crop to the next. Because of course, you do start a field at some point, you have to make no-till beds and make a no-till field. We're not gonna talk about that because that you do one time. Transitioning happens every single day of the week, every single week of the year. We're always transitioning crop to crop to crop.
So just really quickly, first you have to clear the prior crop that was there. You might broad fork, although we don't right now anymore. You might apply some organic fertilizers or compost, then you will transplant and you will water and cover in and continue on. So the first one, taking out the prior crop, clearing the beds, we are not going to pull that out because that is going to be opening the soil. If we have the soil surface right here, we want to cut it right at the soil surface, or even better if we can, just slightly below. So you can see here, this is a kale crop, and even though it was flowering, it was still had delicious leaves, so we were continuing with it. This was like maybe a March picture. This was overwintered. Marty has some big loppers, big shears that he's using to cut it right below the soil surface, and then all of this is going to go to the compost pile.
But remember, there's more biomass below ground, right? That's what's going to be just feeding all that biology in there. So then once
and we want to keep all that rhizosphere right in place.
So once you removed all the biomass from the surface of the soil and left the soil undisturbed, then you come back and if you need to, you can broad fork the bed or you can rake it out to make it flat. But we found that raking out the top of the bed is about like tilthing, and it blows out your soil. It removes the nitrogen and carbon and makes the soil very friable and really kills the biology. So we don't like to rake our beds. And the broad fork, we only used as a transition tool to go from tillage to no-till. Once we've been no-till for a few years, we just don't need the broad fork anymore. So our earliest fields that we switched over to no-till, they haven't seen a broad fork in 7 years, but they've had on the order of 20, 30, 40 crops per bed without any broad fork in that time. So really what happens next after you've removed the above ground biomass is you come back and apply organic fertilizers as needed and compost as needed. It's not every time, and it's not a lot every time. This is a nice high contrast picture. It looks like a lot. We're putting on about 1 centimeter or less of compost per bed, and that's a maximum application, not a minimum. We can certainly do less, but it's always as needed.
And we'll make that decision based upon what was the crop that was in there. Was it a heavy feeder like a brassica? Was it in there a long time like Brussels sprouts or tomatoes or something like that? Or was it a light feeder? Are we taking out, a little Napa cabbage and we're going to put in a lettuce? If we're doing a transition like that, we might not do anything. We'll just clear out the prior crop. While we're clearing it out, we'll pull a couple of weeds and transplant in the next crop. But
so, for example, we frequently will have our very last cucumber crop will go in the ground around August 1st. We'll prep the bed with compost and organic fertilizers for that cucumber crop. And then it's killed in the hoop house by end of October, the frosts and the fungus and everything else. When we clear out the cucumber plants at the end of October, we'll do 0 compost and 0 fertilizers and go back in with not just 1 lettuce crop, but a 2nd lettuce crop in December and a 3rd lettuce crop in February until that one comes out in March. And then we prep the bed again for a summer squash crop for the summertime. So that 1 application of organic fertilizers and compost in August is good enough for the cucumber crop and 3 more lettuce crops afterwards.
You want to talk about fertilizers? Okay, they're going to have different.
Yeah, and then transplanting. Child labor always helps. Thank you, Anna. And then you water in by hand to really settle the roots and settle the plants. And also that's a great time to walk back over it and make sure you did it right. And then you cover the beds as needed, whether it's frost blankets against birds or frost or wind, or you have some netting against birds or deer or anything else. So a lot of covering for a lot of different reasons. And here we have, you may have seen this before, it's Don, Mikey, and Karen, 3 people, and they're going to transition 4 85-foot long beds, so 25-meter beds, and it takes about 45 minutes for 3 people to do all 4 beds. And you can see we have the crops that are standing here. These are all overwintered kales and overwintered mustards. This is done in about mid-April. And here we are clearing all the above ground biomass. And all that's going to go out to the compost pile. Some are being cut off with loppers, some with harvest knives, depending on the size of the stem. Once it's all being hauled off the compost pile, the irrigation lines are put off. Calcium, feather meal, compost goes on. About 2 1/4 wheelbarrows per 85-foot bed at this point. We're less now. You can see the bed ends still have the flowers in them. That hasn't changed. Now we're, coffee break. And you can see we're actually doing cauliflower, Romanesco cauliflower, intercropped with the lettuce crops. We're actually multi-cropping in all of these beds. So we're gonna have that big, huge Romanesco cauliflower crop sometime in June, but the lettuces will come out in May. And anytime, water in, done.
So all the carbon and biology that these plants helped support in the ground without any soil disturbance is going to help these next ones thrive. And that's really what we're aiming to do with each of our crop transitions.
And those bed transitions are happening every single week of the year. Every single week of the year, nonstop. And I want to mention at this point, just so I don't forget, that people have asked us, well, how do you get such high organic matter? Is it because of all the compost you've applied? And it's not. We've done some we've done some calculations with some soil scientists, and if you look at the top, we've tested our soil down 1 meter and look at the organic matter level in all the different layers down 1 meter. And if you account for all the compost we've added onto the farm, less than a quarter of our organic matter increase is attributable to the compost. More than 3/4 of the increase in soil organic matter is based on those 5 principles. Those 5 principles are the key to success. Compost is just one tool in your toolbox. You have thousands of tools. It's only one tool.
This is just another example. We've got 3 people here, and they're going to take out this crop of tatsoi. It was about 2/3 harvested, and then the rest bolted flowered before we were able to get to it.
This is
So,
about a 20-minute time lapse.
yeah, so they're cutting it out, putting down the compost again. It is a lot faster.
And done. So 20-minute transition, just boom, done. Go on to the next set of beds, next set of beds, next set of beds, and keep moving around the farm after you've done harvest in the morning and before you do any other nursery work in the afternoon.
Yep.
So very fast.
Okay. So sort of wrapping all of that up a little bit, sort of the things that are very important to us and that all work off of each other. First of all, no tillage of any sort on the farm once the beds are established. Second, we're very intensive. And one of the things we really say to new farmers is start with less than you think you can do and do it really well. Because if you are intensive and you're not letting the weeds come in, you're not letting the soil sort of volatilize because nothing's happening in it, but you're taking one productive crop, immediately getting it out, getting the next one out, immediately taking that one out, and next one in, having that multi-crop, the more intensive you can be, yes, you are feeding yourself, feeding your community more, you are making more money, but you are also feeding the soil more, and so helping the whole system. So being intensive is an imperative. It is super important. And then also the ecology, both the above ground ecology and the below ground. Coming back to Paul's quote, life sustains the capacity for more life. Great.
So the last little bit here before we take a little break, and we want to sort of talk about this regenerative agriculture for a changing climate. And hopefully we're all moving beyond the word sustainable, because sustainable is like the lowest common denominator. How do we just barely get by without hurting things? That's not good enough on planet Earth anymore. We have harmed planet Earth so much that we need to regenerate the damage. We need to undo that damage and regenerate the life systems on this planet. And with that changing climate, we have all kinds of challenges. And we're seeing it on our farm absolutely every single day. In fact, as we just said, we had -5 this morning. And then on Sunday, tomorrow, we're going to have like 2 or 3 inches of rain. Yeah, so we have another 7 centimeters of rain coming.
So just a couple of examples and how we have seen having really healthy soil and a regenerative system with perennials and annuals help us with this. Because yeah, we want a farm to sequester carbon and get it out to fight climate change, but we also have to deal with climate change. So it's sort of that we have to deal with climate change, and how can the healthy soil help us out with that? So one of the things that we have is frost, and we heard an awesome presentation this morning about farming in the cold, and we've been trying to tell this to our neighbors for a long time. Yes, you actually can grow stuff, and look at this kale, it's covered in frost, and look at these Brussels sprouts, they're covered in frost, and they will repair themselves if you manage them well, and if you let the soil be healthy and feed them.
We've actually found that, on our drought winters, when there's no rainfall, there's no cloud cover, and we freeze a lot more. It's much colder in drought winters for us because there's no cloud cover. And we can spend 7 weeks down in the teens. So we can spend 7 weeks that winter with temperatures -6 or lower. And that's really hard on plants, we thought. So when it wasn't a drought winter, when there's lots of rain, we thought, oh good, this is wonderful. We have more rain, it won't be as cold. The problem with more rain is more clouds, less sunlight. And we have found that actually the rainy winters with less sunlight are far more challenging for our plants than the freeze. The frost is nothing. They can shrug that off and keep growing. So it's really a matter of how do you manage the plants for optimal health. And yes, a high soil organic matter means high organic and high biology in the soil means you have more nutrient exchange, which is more resources for that plant to fight against the frost and stay healthy and functioning. Plus, high organic matter means a darker colored soil. Darker colored soil pulls in more sunlight, stays warmer longer. Warmer soil has higher biological activity. It's all a self-reinforcing virtuous cycle. Little hoop house in the winter, we have a bed covered, so we couldn't plant anything into it, and then a couple beds black covered, and a couple beds with frost blankets, heavy ones, and then some carrots come along, I think.
Droughts. So we definitely have had some pretty serious droughts in these years. This year, we actually had 2 artificial droughts, we're calling them. One, in August, our well pump went out when we were having a week of temperatures in the high 30s degrees centigrade. That was not so fun. And then
7 days with 35 degrees, or 34 and 35 degrees centigrade. No, 35 to 38 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, exactly.
Temperatures in the water.
And then just this November, we had fires that were up to about 20 kilometers away from our place, and the power company cut off all the power. And the weather that created those fires had shifts in temperature of...
That was from 35 down to -1 to 34
Yes.
to -2 every day.
And we had no power to do
no
any
water.
irrigation, which irrigation would have helped those plants in that time. So I guess what I'm saying is having droughts, having that healthy soil, our plants had a stronger immune system and were more robust and able to work with it. We also have to have infrastructure. You're seeing Anna and I right here on our pump siphoning out water because we had no power so that we could water our nursery. We used our ponds, infrastructure that we've had put into our property so that we could use that water with a gas pump to water our fields.
So, but think about it, because the last rainfall was early April. This is now November before it's rained yet. It hasn't rained since early April. So we've only had irrigation water going since early April, and now we have no water in the fields. The soil's really bone dry. We were unable to water the fields for 5 or 6 days. Plants shrugged, didn't bother them. They just kept growing, not an issue. The only challenge was the nursery. But the organic matter in the soil had a higher water holding capacity and a higher water use efficiency rate with the plants. So the plants got by just fine without that irrigation after however many months of no rainfall and really dry soil.
We've seen 2 different studies that have looked at with a 1 percentage point increase. Now, I'm going to have to deal with all the numbers now. With a 1 percentage point increase in soil organic matter, an acre of land can hold an additional, one scientist said 16,000 and another said 70,000 gallons of plant available water. I'm not going to do all the math to translate that, I'm sorry. But that's for 1 percentage point increase. And we've gone from 2 to 8. So multiply that by 6. So that's how much more water the soil is able to hold. But conversely, also how it is able to hold air. So when we have floods on our property, which happens pretty much every year, one drought winter we had no floods.
And most winters we have 4 to 7 floods in our bottom fields.
Yeah, the soil is also able to hold air so that the plants don't drown. And that is because of the higher soil organic matter. So
We actually had a neighbor around the corner to the right who was farming the same soil, same vegetables, but they were organic tillage and not no-till. And they had similar floods in their fields, and they were on the phone with us the next day. They were very scared. They said we had to harvest everything because it was all dying in the fields. There was no oxygen left in the soil, and all the plants were just anemic and dying for the whole week after those floods. We had 0 crop loss from floods. 0 crop loss, unless they go under, in which case you can't harvest because of waterborne bacteria. But plants just with the soggy soil, not a problem at all when you have high organic matter. It can hold that water and still have space for the oxygen for the plants to breathe.
So these are some beets that had just been transplanted. This was a very late flood that we had. We weren't expecting it this late, and you could see this was when it was starting to flood. It ended up covering the entire bed, and then once it receded, yes, the irrigation lines are a little messy, and you've got some mulch that floated in, but the plants continued just fine. Okay, so this is us in Northern California. California goes about like this. Here's the San Francisco Bay Area. We are about there. So this was our fires a year ago, and the smoke that we had as a result. The fire nearby is definitely bad. The smoke means that you cannot be working out there. We have our workers and ourselves all working with masks and so forth. But there has, okay.
The other problem with the smoke is it blocks the sunlight and puts you into a deep freeze mode. And then by 8 o'clock at night, you're already below 0, and you don't come back above 0 until noon the next day. So all of a sudden, you only have 7 or 8 hours a day when you have above freezing temperatures, and it really harms the plants from a lack of sunlight and a lack of warmth, and the biology as well. But again, healthy, robust soil biology was able to counteract that, and our plants kept growing, no issue, no problem.
Then ash, a fire we had the year prior to this that was very close to our farm and burned a lot of structures. We had customers, and actually I myself was really, really concerned because a lot of those structure fires may have had lead in them, and we were finding pages of recipe books in our fields and leaves from trees we didn't have in our little area. And I was saying, wait, how do we know that our food is safe to harvest? We have this ash falling out of the sky. And did a lot of research. Thankfully, one of the women who works part-time on our farm is also a soil scientist that helps clean up brown sites. And what I found, and a lot of other people in our community have found, is what would you do to remediate that soil, to help that soil be healthy again? You would add compost, increase the soil organic matter, and inoculate with fungi. Well, what are we doing already in our soil? We're increasing our soil organic matter. We're making sure that we have a high level of fungi in there. So again, by having healthy biology, healthy soil, we're able to be resilient when we have a lot of these problems. That was so depressing.
I'm going to wind it up there, Mac. I put the link in for you so you can finish watching it.
Right. Cool. Thanks.
And just so you know, it's at the 1 hour and 7 minute mark.
10727, it looks like.
10737.
Perfect.
And there's only about 12 more minutes left, but I got to get out of here.
All right. Thanks, Ace. It was awesome hanging out.
Oh, man,
brother.
this was fun.
Yeah.
If you guys enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and visit those farming sites and learn to grow and grow.
Peace, everybody.
Bye-bye.